from the cooks who prepare food at America's largest buffet, to vendors prepping $1 million worth of food and drinks for football fans.
Named the Big House because it is the largest stadium in the U.S.
We followed chefs racing against the clock to feed hungry crowds around the world. Our first stop is Pennsylvania, where buffet cooks prepare for a line out the door.
The cooks start prep at 4 a.m.
We'll go through about 700 to 750 pounds of bacon.
Saturdays are their busiest days as they race to prep for 8,000 people.
Good to go on that one.
Oh, the energy is high. It's like our Super Bowl.
The chefs cook a ton of different dishes, from American to Pennsylvania Dutch fare, honoring the Mennonite and Amish traditions of the area. Like this local delicacy called scrapple.
Liver, and it's ground up.
At the fryer station, they crisp up sausage patties and links. On the griddles, chefs drop hundreds of pancakes. This line is for egg dishes. Summer and her team go through over 700 eggs for a Saturday breakfast. On the other side of the kitchen, this team starts cutting veggies for lunch.
They'll set up this chopper. The broccoli, cauliflower, they chop by hand. It's a lot of prep.
By 8 a.m., the line wrapped around the lobby, and I was getting a little hungry, so it was time to check out the buffet myself.
Hi!
Just one.
Just one today? That is going to be $17.69. Okay.
Gotcha. Is there a time limit?
There is not a time limit. You can stay as long as you'd like. Just if you want to stay past 11 o'clock, that's when we switch over to our lunch buffet. There you go. There's your ticket. Head down there. You can get seated by a hostess.
Okay.
And they'll let you know how everything works.
Thank you so much.
Can I get an omelet with everything on it?
One chocolate chip. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. This is like childhood right here. Jiggle. Scrapple. She said this was a Pennsylvania favorite. Never have too much bacon. French fries. You need a little lime bacon to hold you over for the table bacon, you know? I have no shame. Let's go. All right.
Don't make me do it.
Got the first round. The cinnamon syrup was too much. That is the thickest omelet. I'm gonna crush it in like 30 seconds flat. I'm gonna try the Pennsylvania Dutch scrapple. It's just like, it's literally just a patty of like pork. She said liver's in it, all that stuff. Baked French toast. Whoa. Okay, that's good. I'm gonna try this whoopie pie. Oh man, I'm covered in chocolate. Flip the slip over when you're finished dining, and no tipping, please. I mean, look at this spread. Like, if you wanted to try everything, you're inevitably not gonna be able to finish it all.
What's really mind-boggling? All of this was just $16. And those affordable prices are why Americans fell in love with buffets to begin with. Buffets can be traced back to 18th century Sweden, where elites feasted on large spreads called smorgasbords. Around the same time, the French laid out fancy meals of their own. That's actually where we got the name for buffet, after the French word for sideboard, where the food was served. But it was a Las Vegas casino manager who brought the idea to the American masses in 1946 with a 24-hour buffet that cost just $1.
And that was something that didn't make him a lot of money. Herb's Buffet was meant to attract people there, and then they would stay and eat, and then eventually gamble, and that's where the casino made its money.
In the 1970s, buffet chains started to spread across the U.S.
Golden Corral. Delightful, delectable.
At Old Country Buffet, kids always get what they want.
The restaurants could keep meal prices affordable because they had heavy foot traffic and low labor costs.
It doesn't take very many people to run a Golden Corral compared to a fancy restaurant.
There weren't as many servers, and a smaller kitchen staff cooked in big batches. While a chef at a sit-down restaurant can cook for 25 people in an hour, a buffet chef can serve 200.
The profit margins at these places were razor thin, but it is definitely something that gets consumers in the door. And for a lot of restaurants, that's challenge number one.
By the 1980s, buffets were a roaring success.
And a key part of the American dream is having excess, right? Having lots of stuff. And in a way, an all-you-can-eat buffet fits perfectly in with that.
You know, Wendy's Super Bar is great for families because there's something for everyone.
The concept was so successful that big brands like KFC and Wendy's hopped in on the trend.
I went to Pizza Hut regularly in high school for the buffet because it was cool as a high school kid to gorge yourself with pizza.
Shady Maple's founders started the buffet at the height of all-you-can-eats in 1985. From a small roadside veggie stand in the 60s, their new 300-seat buffet concept was a quick hit. 1.5-hour waits were common. But soon, all-you-can-eat stumbled across the country. In the era of fad diets, customers opted for healthier options. Then,
into the 90s especially, there are a number of fairly high-profile incidents involving kind of mass food poisoning at these places.
In 2000, a Milwaukee Sizzler was responsible for hundreds of probable E. coli cases. In 2003, a Chi-Chi's in Pittsburgh was the site of, at the time, the largest hepatitis A outbreak in U.S. history. Bad green onions infected 660 people and killed 4. In 2010, a man got salmonella from an Old Country buffet in Wyoming. The court ordered the chain to pay him $11 million in damages.
When you have enough stories in the news about people getting food poisoning from these places, that affects public perception, and people will go elsewhere, and it's been downhill ever since.
Between 1998 and 2017, more than 1,300 all-you-can-eat restaurants in the U.S. closed down. Then came the coronavirus pandemic.
It's hard to imagine a more lethal blow to all-you-can-eat buffets than COVID. Everyone takes from the same trays and puts it on their plate. There's a bunch of silverware sitting out. It's all communal in a sense, and I don't want to eat food that maybe other people have sneezed on. That's just gross.
Sizzler, one of the biggest buffet chains in the U.S., announced bankruptcy in September 2020. The following year, the parent company of Old Country Buffet did the same. The pandemic shook Shady Maple too.
We had to close here for over 5 months. We reopened, then we had to close again between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
They started doing takeout, but what really kept the company afloat, Summer says, was the Shady Maple grocery store behind the buffet, which brought in thousands of customers every day. But since 2021, Shady Maple's buffet business has come back with roaring success.
The last 2 years have been our best years ever, and we're continuing to thrive.
Shady Maple's reputation for making fresh food has kept people coming back.
There is this notion that everything is fresh or homemade. That's a different kind of proposition than a CC's or a Golden Corral.
Instead of using pre-made mixes, Chef Brian Nagley whips up the bechamel sauce for the mac and cheese from scratch, using milk and shredded cheddar. He also makes the stuffing, or filling as the Pennsylvania Dutch call it, by hand, following the founder's original recipe. He mixes 10 pounds of butter with bread cubes.
You can feel it. You know what I mean? You feel it with your hands.
To keep food fresh, the staff monitors the buffet closely and orders more when a tray is close to running out.
So this is our ordering system that we order the food here, that it goes back to the fryer aisle in the cook's department.
Kielbasa!
The fryers get the ticket, this one for fried shrimp, and fill the order as quickly as possible. That ticket stays with the batch back through the order window. But while an order of fried shrimp might take chefs 2 minutes to fill, the fried chicken takes 30 minutes.
He's putting a load of chicken in. His name is Tungsten. And then after he puts it in, we have them programmed in. 18 minutes it takes for fried chicken. What's your nickname, son?
Hey, handsome man.
Because he thinks he's handsome. He calls me boss lady.
Tongsun dunks and breads every piece by hand. Each order has 60 pieces, so he's always juggling multiple batches at once.
Yes, ma'am.
Cook John Plott cooks the veggies they chopped earlier.
What'd you just put in?
Cabbage. Yes, ma'am. Cabbage, and then when it comes out, we throw some of our brown butter and cornflake mixture on top of it. Summer. This one just froze again.
Most restaurants have a shutdown, and we don't. We keep going from the moment we open at 7 a.m. till we close at 7:30. So the equipment sometimes gets tired, like everybody else does.
Down the aisle, John jumps in to make potatoes.
We mix our mashed potatoes for 5 minutes. If you do it under, they don't turn out. If you do it over, they don't turn out. There is a science to it.
At the end of the aisle, chefs pull the briskets out of the smoker.
So on a Saturday, we'll go through 42.
We have it down to a science where it's a hickory smoke, cooked 12 to 14 hours.
Here they're grilling rows of pierogi and kielbasa sausages.
Hi, it's me again.
If you're like me and want to stay for both breakfast and lunch, you just have to go back to the front and pay the $13 difference.
It's not actually an advertised thing, so you only hear it by word of mouth. It's a fun little perk from being here.
If you have the stomach for 2 meals in a row.
Yes.
Round 2. The only thing Summer said I needed to eat was this brisket.
How long have you been working here for?
Long time, and I've been always on this grill.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Some people say it's expensive, but it's actually really cheap. You know, when you think about it.
Hey! Love it. I need to get the fried chicken. That's what everyone told me was the best thing here. Cool. Handsome man, he's the one that made that. Okay, got the goods. And I think that's the stuffing that Mr. Brian made for us. Can I get a burger with cheese, please? Oh my God. We haven't seen any of these foods yet. Oh my word. Oh my God. Okay. So the plan of getting a little bit of everything does not work when there is 700s of everything.
Finally, I got to dig in, starting with these bright pink pickled eggs, a traditional Amish eat.
Look at that. It's not as bad as some of the people I've watched on YouTube expressed. It's very vinegary, but I think it's just the color, man. Like, to see an egg that's literally as pink as flesh, it's a little jarring, and I don't know if I can get past that. Okay, so the fried chicken, look at that. Now that, crispy. God, that's good. Best thing I've eaten all day, bar none. Best thing. Wow. No wonder he knows he's handsome. We're gonna try this pulled pork.
The barbecue pork and Cajun catfish were decent. The mac and cheese?
That's actually really good. The brisket! 7 people said this brisket was like the only thing to get here, all right? Not to say my expectations are like to the moon, but they're high. No, it's a little dry. Good chicken wings. Good chicken wings, good fried chicken, good fried shrimp. Oh, the mashed potatoes! So it's like a creamier version of what you would get out of a box, I think. I mean, for the amount of food that you can get, Like, I feel like the quantity alone is kind of worth it.
So we tried the Chinese buffet, we tried Golden Corral, and we were comparing both of them, and we realized how bad the actual food is at both of them. And then when you come over here though, this place is actually decent. It tastes more like real food. I'll definitely come back, yeah. This is my third time like the past two months.
We came one time and that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
And now we look forward to coming every week.
I love this place.
By 5:30 p.m., the line has wrapped around the lobby and out the door. Like all buffets, Shady Maple works on thin margins, but this volume has kept it afloat. It sees 3 times more traffic than a Golden Corral in the area, and 15 times that of a local CC's. And because of that giant line, each platter of food is turned over quickly, within 20 minutes.
That does alleviate some of the food safety issues because you're turning things over so quickly, nothing sits around for too long.
But when we look at like the decay of the American buffet, I feel like this doesn't even sit in the same category.
Shady Maple has found its niche. It's not only the largest buffet in America, it's also leaned into the allure of the Amish country around it, focusing on home-style Pennsylvania Dutch food and touting local eats like that scrapple and mush.
And I think the reason that this place has endured is like food aside, it's the experience.
With a gift shop and a grocery store looming behind the buffet, Shady Maple has become a destination.
They become rare enough to be novel again, right? And people will go to Amish country and say, oh, let's go to Shady Maple, because who the hell has one of these in their neighborhood anymore?
We're just 24 hours away from kickoff, and this is when the action picks up.
So the goal on a Friday before game day is always that everything is ready to roll.
Deliveries from the main kitchen come in on the service level. Chris says this one truck holds as much as $20,000 worth of food.
I'm sure he's got multiple pallets coming in. So it never stops, we just keep on going.
With your legs.
On a Friday like this, everyone's job is to get as much cooking done as possible.
You don't want to have to walk in on game day and then do a whole lot of production. You just want to just go, go, go.
In one area, they're setting up veggie platters and prepping salads.
So stuff that can't sit for a long period of time without being compromised.
They'll grill mark hot dogs and burger patties.
It's quick. If you can do it quick without dumping them all, it works really well.
I'm always teaching up the game day though, so I'm a game room green, so.
Chris handles salmon rosettes for salads headed to the private suites.
Can't be done too far in advance. It is fresh fish. You always have to make a little bit of spare. So if there's not one that's exactly the way I want it to look, I've got ones that I can work with instead.
Then chefs bring the food to the cooler to load onto carts.
There he is hiding back there. All right, there's your rosettes.
This is an organizational nightmare. Each of these carts ends up at one of over 70 kitchens and prep areas around the stadium. So chefs run through checklists.
Relish was 11. French onion is 9.
To make sure the right dishes end up on the right cart. They also label each cart with the item and quantity.
That way we know that we've got everything where it's got to be.
He's getting nervous.
He's had 400 carts to build, so.
I know, right?
In the main kitchen, hot food gets labeled with a color for each concession stand.
And then where's the red? The red is actually pink. We don't do red here because it's Ohio State.
They'll move as much as they can on Friday before the concourse fills up with fans.
That way the food's up, ready to go.
Chris heads out for the day around 6 p.m.
When we walk into those doors tomorrow morning, they all know what's important. Couple minutes to 1 outside the big house. Time to fire it all up. Chef coming in. Chef coming in. I announce myself when I come in. The stadium itself will be swept by bomb dogs throughout the course of the evening. The last thing you want to do is walk into a dark, quiet kitchen and startle a bomb dog. All right.
Chef Chris turns on all the equipment and runs over the plan for the day.
Then when we walk in on Saturday, all we got to do is fire and go.
By 3 a.m., his sous chefs start rolling in.
So far, so good. Now we're just moving into the next phases.
By 8 a.m., they're frying the chicken tenders, and they've got to move fast.
I'll go through 40 cases of chicken tenders each game just for the sweet level alone.
Chefs also slice up meat for shawarma and tacos. Just like in the main kitchen, pizza preppers are racing against the clock.
I can say the challenges of trying to make 6,000 pizzas in 4 hours.
Buddy's is one of the stadium's newest vendors. Its Detroit-style pizzas are made off-site, but have to be cooked, cut, and boxed in the stadium on game day.
Just like the field, right? You gotta have a great team. We're just trying to go out there and put on a good performance. Come home with a dub.
Buddy's, like every other kitchen in the stadium, feels the squeeze from a lack of space. The University of Michigan's Big House was built in 1927. While expansions through the years have added more stands, suites, and towers, the bones of the stadium have stayed the same.
So typically, most buildings are going to hold 50 to 80,000. You're going to have, a 20% no-show rate. The no-show rate here is maybe 5%. So we're getting over 100,000 people every single game.
It makes moving food a nightmare. There's only one tunnel to cart food along, and only one elevator.
I've been standing right here for about 30 minutes waiting on the elevator. We just stopped on floor 5. I don't know if they have to get out. For reasons like this, I gotta wait for them to stop on their floor, and then I get off on floor 2, so we gotta go back in the elevator and push these halfway across the stadium.
Banquet server Cameron Brennan walks up to 6 miles a game, dropping off food. It's a trek he doesn't seem to mind.
If you got a little bit of spare time, you could take a glimpse at the game, I love it though, because I get to watch the football game, It's real cool. The elevator took like 40 minutes, man.
Finally, Cameron drops off his delivery upstairs.
Well, I guess this is where we part ways. Go blue, go blue.
This is the level with all the box suites. They come fully stocked with food and drinks.
So essentially, we get all the food, we bring it up, it comes up all nice and wrapped. We'll unwrap it, and then as my suites get here, I pull out their cold food and set it out nice for them.
Sarah Jacobus has been serving the same 4 box suites since 2014.
So we've got frittatas, fruits, goes with their beautiful parfaits. And then I find that people will eat these more if there's spoons in them, so it works out really nice. And it's kind of cute.
It's 2 hours before kickoff, and the gates open.
So once gates open, I begin walking the building.
That's Michael Jordan, a different Michael Jordan. He works for Sodexo Live, the catering company for Michigan athletics. Since the Big House has so little room to move inside, Michael set up water stations and shipping container food stands outside.
It's really allowed us to expand our footprint of the stadium.
The new layout has been a huge success. Total food and drink transactions are up over 13% from last year, increasing the stadium's revenue by 11%. Michael says that's thanks in part to simpler menus and a better flow in the concourses. Constant communication on walkie-talkies also helps the team keep the food moving.
With 100,000 people with cell phones in the area, service just kind of drops to nothing.
Across the stadium, workers are scooping popcorn out of trash cans, prepping pretzels, and finishing burgers.
There's no playing catch-up when there's 100,000 people in the building.
By now, lines are starting to form.
We are a really busy stand. I don't know, they love it.
Hot dogs are the stadium's #1 seller. It moves about 10,000 of them each game. Concessions move quickly. Servers aim to get food to customers in under a minute. Speed helps the culinary team hit its $1 million sales target each game.
And that's just in food and beverage. We're still not serving alcohol in the stadium.
This year, the university has one fewer home game. That means it's set to miss out on nearly $9 million in ticket sales, which makes food earnings all the more important. New ordering systems have helped speed up some concessions. Self-checkout averages just 18 seconds a transaction, and it's helped this burger stand double sales this year. Now it's crunch time.
So about 15 minutes before kickoff will be our first really big push.
Finally, the action on the field kicks off. But the food doesn't stop rolling.
And then halftime is definitely our biggest push.
You're not walking around with this. You're mid. We score a touchdown, boom, popcorn goes flying. It's like shooting confetti out, but it's popcorn.
Michigan pulls off a win against Rutgers, but the chef's game day isn't over.
I tend to hang all the way through to the very bitter end. And once it gets to the end of the game, there's no leaving until they're all gone. So you're just in it.
It's not uncommon for staffers to pull 12-hour shifts.
I mean, a lot of them are here more than they're at home. It's amazing they keep coming back. Dempsey, don't smile like that.
Michael says that's why finding the right team is important.
It's hard to hire 700 people for an event. It's for 7 times a year.
About 500 of these workers are actually volunteers from local charities. Sodexo Live donates a percentage of food sales to their causes. The catering company pays only about 200 of them, including the chefs and servers. They make between $30 and $50 an hour. Chris does one final walkthrough of the now quiet suites.
Well, we've reached 3 o'clock. For me, I'm about 14 hours in on the day.
He's assessing waste.
Chili, they've gone through about half of it. The wings are gone. Handful of hot dogs, handful of veggie brats left. But when the day is done, the trash can never lies.
He'll use this info to tweak food ordering for the next game.
It's a giant stadium, and so you're going to have excess.
Volunteers pack up all the extra food to be donated to local pantries.
We're in the range of about 5,000 items a game of what they're picking up.
Then they gear up to come back in a few weeks and do it all over again.
I mean, I'd mark this one down as probably a solid B+, maybe an A-. Looking forward to the next 3 to go.
Lavish menus are also a big part of the Derby. And behind the scenes, a team of cooks is racing against the clock.
Each day has about 40 different menus track-wide.
Chef Robert Lopez runs a kitchen of 100 executive chefs and 1,500 supporting staff. That's not a lot of people, considering they're serving 400,000 guests in under a week. So that's 7 Super Bowls worth of food.
We bring in chefs from all over the country.
The team has to stay relatively small because they're working in tight quarters. They're ordering 10,000 pounds of smoked brisket and thousands of chicken breasts from local farms and 1,000 pounds of cheese. Most of it arrives just days before the Derby in about 1,100 semi-trucks. Some of it gets here on race day at about 4 a.m.
So how do you keep yourself going through that?
Lots of caffeine.
And then there are the drinks. The mint juleps are the best seller. They bring in about $2.5 million in sales.
We're doing 1,000 pounds of mint, more than 20,000 bottles of bourbon.
This is Brandon Fullen. He oversees all the drink orders.
thousands and thousands and thousands of cans of Coca-Cola. We're going to be going through pallets of water every hour all across the track.
Could you give me an idea of the number of bottles?
I couldn't possibly.
The day begins with making a type of sweet rice pudding called kheer, which is a special menu addition for Gurpurab. At the helm of the operation, is head chef Balbir Singh, who's been overseeing this process for years.
700 किलो की खीर बननी है जो पूरे दिन चलेगी.
Large bags of white rice are poured into metal bowls and washed by hand. 25 kilograms of the washed rice is then scooped into a massive pot of water and mixed by a mechanical arm.
एक कढ़ाई में हमारी 250 किलो दूध की खीर बन रही है इस टाइम, जो कि कम से कम जो क्वांटिटी है उसकी 300-400 किलो हो जाती है.
Once the pot has been filled with milk and it starts to boil, they pour in a large bag of wheat flour.
जो कंप्लीट 1 घंटे में तैयार हो जाती है हमारी चीज़. अदरवाइज वैसे अगर हम तैयार करते हैं तो 2 से 2.5 घंटे लगते हैं, लेकिन ये जब से इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मशीनें हमारी चली हैं हमें बहुत सुविधा हो गई है. ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा काम कम से कम टाइम में हो जाता है.
During the pandemic, the kitchen found itself needing to make more food with less stuff. The solution was to introduce pots that could automatically stir and cook most dishes in half the time.
तो ऐसा सिस्टम सेटअप किया है, अब 1 घंटे में हम 1 लाख आदमियों को लंगर भी प्रोवाइड करा सकते हैं. तो कोरोना काल में जैसे लंगर की ज़रूरत पड़ी, एक दिन में हमने 3.5 लाख लोगों को लंगर उनके घर तक पहुंचाया था.
While the kitchen has embraced technology for cooking, many of the vegetables the kitchen uses are still processed by hand. One of the most popular dishes the community kitchen makes is aloo matar, a curry dish made with potatoes, peas, and a creamy tomato sauce. Making this dish begins with heating vegetable oil in a pot as a base for the tadka.
जैसे घरों में ग्रेवी बनाते हैं उसी हिसाब से प्याज, टमाटर, अदरक, लहसुन प्लस उसके बाद मसाले, जीरा, काली मिर्च, देगी मिर्च, किचन किंग, कसूरी मेथी, वो सब डाल के कंप्लीट सब्जी तड़का तैयार किया जाता है.
This is followed by baskets of potatoes, peas, and large ladles of tomato puree.
एक कढ़ाई में हम 200 किलो आलू और 60 किलो मटर डालते हैं, जो कि क्वांटिटी इसकी भी 300-400 किलो कंप्लीट बनती है बनने में.
When the dish is ready, chefs tip the pot and scrape everything out. Another curry dish the kitchen serves for the holiday feast is kadi chawal, which is made with a base of cumin, masala, and dried fenugreek leaves. When the base is mixed, chefs add gram flour and hung curd.
इसके अंदर हमारा 15 से 20 किलो बेसन लगता है और 30 से 40 किलो मतलब कि दही लगता है.
While the kadi mixes, chefs prepare the final part of the dish on the side. They mix spinach, onions, gram flour, and spices in a large pot to make pakodas or fritters. When they achieve the right consistency, the mix is then tossed into a wok and fried quickly. These fritters are then added into the curry.
ये मतलब ये भी 300-400 किलो इसमें कंप्लीट कड़ी बनती है.
Next up, the kitchen is making aloo gobi, a simple vegetarian dish made with potatoes and cauliflower. It starts with a tadka base of cumin, turmeric, and chili powder. Then the chefs add in baskets of cauliflower and potatoes. They mix everything together to evenly coat the veggies and continue stirring until they are finished cooking. An everyday staple on the langar's menu is fresh dal, or split lentils. Green, yellow, and brown lentils are all washed by hand daily and added into a pot full of water. The lentils are then seasoned with salt, chili powder, and turmeric and covered.
5 कुकर है हमारे पास, एक के अंदर 60 से 70 किलो कच्ची दाल बनती है। ये सारा ऑटोमेटिक है। जब दाल कंप्लीट हो जाती है ये बजर बजने चालू हो जाता है कि दाल कंप्लीट हो गई है। इसमें भी बहुत टाइमिंग कम लगती है, जैसे दाल को 2 से 3 घंटे लगते हैं, इसमें आधे से पौना घंटा लगता है। इतनी जल्दी बनती है और इतनी टाइमिंग कम लगती है ना कि जितनी संगत आ जाए, लाखों के हिसाब से संगत आती है, कभी लंगर की कभी कमी नहीं हुई। जिसको कंप्लीट बनने के बाद दाल 350-400 किलो होती है।
Across the kitchen, flatbreads are made using machines.
उसके बाद ये हमारी मशीन रोटी मेकर जो 1 घंटे में 2000 प्रसादें बनाती है और कंप्लीट ऑटोमेटिक है। सब कुछ इसमें पेड़े, आटा, सब ओनली आटा गूंदना पड़ता है हमारे को। गूंद के इसके अंदर डालेंगे, कटिंग, पेड़ा सब इसी ने करना है। उसके बाद ये देखो, ये रोटी कंप्लीट हो के अप डाउन 3 राउंड में बाहर है।
While these machines make a majority of the bread the langar uses, there is another area of the kitchen dedicated to making these breads by hand. This is done so people can practice siwa, or self-love service, a tenet of Sikhism.
जो संगत आती है, जिनकी श्रद्धा होती है कि हमने भी गुरुद्वारा बंगला साहब में सेवा करनी है, तो वो यहाँ पे आके मैनुअल सेवा कर सकता है। 24 घंटे चलती है, जब भी किसी की श्रद्धा हो कर सकते हैं।
The langar officially opens its doors at 5 a.m. to serve food.
तो आप देखोगे गुरुपुरब का दिन है आज, गुरुपुरब चल रहा है और ये पूरी ऑल ओवर वर्ल्ड में मनाया जाता है। इसी तरह आज गुरुद्वारा बंगला साहब में भी मनाया जा रहा है, तो लाखों में लोग आएंगे।
Because of the kitchen's popularity, it's not uncommon for people to wait 2.5 hours outside to get a free meal. Inside the dining hall, visitors take their seats side by side in long rows known as pangats. This style of seating is an important part of the temple's philosophy of promoting equality and ending discrimination.
तो जहाँ पे राजा भी आए उसको भी उतना ही समानता दी जाती है और एक भिखारी को भी उतनी समानता दी जाती है।
Once everyone is seated, volunteers known as sivadars lead a religious chant in honor of the guru. Then the servers come around spooning large portions of food into metal plates. And while the amount of food one can eat is unlimited, there is a rule that not a single bite of food can be wasted, so plates must be cleaned before finishing the meal.
लंगर की खासियत तो यही है कि वो लंगर है, प्रसाद है, उसको आप एज ए मील नहीं ले सकते, ये एज ए गुरु का प्रसाद होता है और इसमें हर पार्ट ये बेस्ट है, कोई भी इसमें कोई कमी ना होती है ना होनी चाहिए और ये बेस्ट है, अपने में हर चीज़ अच्छी है।
When a batch of guests has finished eating, workers sweep and wash the floors before another group is allowed to enter.
और साफ़ सफाई का पूरा ध्यान दिया जाता है ताकि साफ़ सुथरा रहे। तो हमारी कोशिश यही रहती है कि सबको साफ़ सुथरा, हाइजीनिक और गर्म लंगर तैयार करके दिया जाए।
मैं बंगला साहब काफ़ी बचपन से आ रहा हूँ, लगभग 20-24 साल हो गए जितनी मेरी एज है। खाना साफ़ सुथरा था और काफ़ी आज क्या था कि नॉर्मली क्या होता है कि दाल चावल रोटी मिलती है नॉर्मली, देखा जाए तो नॉर्मली डेज़ पे, बट आज क्या जैसे बैसाखी होती है, आज 31 भी है, तो आज गुरु की कृपा से हमें पनीर भी मिला, खीर भी मिली। और ये देखो कि ऐसा नहीं है कि स्पेशली कुक है कि एक ही बंदा आके बना रहा है, ऐसा नहीं है। कोई भी धर्म का बंदा आके कोई भी सेवा कर सकता है, उसकी मन में सेवा भावना होनी चाहिए। और सेवा से क्या होता है कि दिल में एक भावना जागती है उस अकाल पुरख के लिए, फिर हम उसके आगे फिर हमारा अंदर से बनता है।
The day's preparation starts around 7:30 each morning. Staff members change into sanitized factory shoes and color-coded uniforms and wash their hands twice before entering the kitchen. This is Takagi. He is the nutritionist in charge of the menu, and he is our tour guide for the day.
衛生面では、上処理側という衛生区域に入る人は白い前掛けをかけます。そして、泥野菜等を洗う、非汚染区域、汚染区域というのは青い前掛けをして洗います。
The kitchen is spread across 3 floors and spans 3/4 the area of an American football field. Inside, 70 staff members break into small units, working in unison to prep, cook, and package all of these meals in just under 4 hours.
この部屋は野菜を洗う部屋です。うちはオーガニック、有機野菜を使っていることが多いので、虫等がつきやすいです。
キャベツを、切ったものをほぐしてここで洗って次に、汚れとかも取って次の水槽に渡しています。虫とか卵とかないかをチェックしてなかったらこっちに送り出してるところ送り出します。
虫とかっていることってあるんですか？虫とかがいることってあるんですか？
あります。
地場なんで泥付きでくるんで、泥を落としてから、天地を取って皮むいて味噌汁に入るんですけど、今日は120キロ。
Today's meal consists of millet rice, miso soup, sticky shumai dumplings, cabbage and mustard sauté, and milk. Takagi plans each meal 3 months in advance, so the team has enough time to source all of the ingredients and account for students' allergies. Every menu item he adds is tailored to fit the nutritional needs of different age groups, so every student gets the most nutritious meal they can possibly have.
僕は今お味噌汁を作っています。今日は市内産の大根、オーガニックの小松菜、国産大豆の生揚げ、あとわかめになります。
This massive pot is large enough to cook 750 kilograms of soup at a time. The base of the broth is made by boiling thick slices of dried bonito and louse kelp in water.
今昆布の硬さを見ていて、出汁が出てくると柔らかくなってきたりとか、表面にプツプツができてくるので、そのあたりを目安にしています。
それはやっぱりそのちゃんとしたものを子供に食べさせたいっていうその理念で、そういうちゃんとした
そうですね。はい、
出汁をちょっとそれ説明していただいていいですか？
やはり子どもたちは味覚が非常に育つ時期なので、味に対しては敏感なんですね。
Most of the staff who work here are mothers of students, and many of them take great pride in knowing that the food is made with care and nutritional and healthy ingredients.
ね、お母さん方が、やはり自分事として自分の子供が食べているので、一生懸命やってくれてますね。
One of the most popular items the kitchen makes is shumai. Here, 15 staff members use 180 kilograms of ground pork, 40 kilograms of soybeans, and a variety of blended vegetables to make around 200 shumai by hand. And by the end of the shift, they'll make about 3,000 shumai.
手作りでいいところは、すべての材料がはっきり分かるので、安心して、子どもたちに提供できます。また、食物アレルギー対応においても、材料が明確になっていますので、事故が起こしにくいというふうに考えています。
On top of monitoring allergies, the kitchen is diligent about food safety. Some of the meat used to fill the shumai is always saved and monitored for bacterial growth.
保存食という形で、取り置きをしてまして、食中毒の可能性があったときは、ここから検査をいたします。これに可能性があるかということで、確認をするために2週間程度保存をしています。そのための温度と匂いだったり異物が混入しているかなどは確認をしています。
Besides safety, the kitchen prioritizes using fresh, organic, and local ingredients.
やはりですね、食育という観点でしっかり日本の食文化を伝えていくという観点で和食献立を出しています。国内産を中心にですね、有機ジャスや特別栽培を優先して使っています。将来子どもたちが食卓を担うようになった際にですね、 身近にある日常的な食材を使ってしっかりと献立が立てられるように、そういった見本になるようなことを考えて献立を立てています。私どもの献立ではですね、基本は週に3日はお米ご飯です。それで1日はパン、残り1日は麺類が基本となっておりますが、
To make the rice, the kitchen uses 6 giant pots.
今は43キロです。
かき混ぜるの大変そうですね、それだけあると。
はい。結構体力使います。
In total, 250 kilograms of rice will be made in a very short period of time using a special process.
一度に大量のお米を炊くためには、湯炊きという、炊飯方法になります。この湯炊きというのは、炊飯で一番大事な、お米を入れてから沸騰するまでの時間を短くするために、一度お湯を沸かした中に、お米を投入して、攪拌をするという、大量調理の特殊な方法になります。
And finally, this is the main cooking area, where the cabbage and mustard sauté is made. 140 kilograms of the washed cabbage is boiled before getting sautéed with komatsuna leaf and carrots.
そうですね、結構釜が大きいので大変です。
いい味です。ちゃんと温度も上がっています。一度舌でちゃんと温度も温度計でも測ってますが、食べてみて、ベロでちゃんと確認してます。味付けもいいと思います。
Once all of the food is cooked, meals are portioned into thermal containers and loaded into 5 delivery trucks.
桜堤調理場では、一律の中学校6校と小学校2校合わせて8校に対して、合計3000食の給食を提供しています。子どもの好きなものを出したいという気持ちはありますけれども、やはり食育の観点と、栄養バランスのこともありますので、子どもの好きなものばかり出すわけではありません。味覚のですね、発達を促すためにも、いろいろな食材ですとか料理を食べてもらいたいと考えています。伝統的な食文化とですね、食材の生産と消費についての理解を深めてもらって、食についての正しい理解を深めることでですね、子どもたちが将来大人になった時に正しい食生活、食習慣を身につけるというようなことを目的としています。
All of the ingredients used are funded by the students' families, who pay school lunch fees. Each meal costs about 340 yen, or roughly $2.50, for middle school students, and about 240 to 280 yen for elementary students.
どう？今日の給食どう？今日の給食どう？あれもう食べ終わっちゃったね。
いつも早い人。
今日何美味しかった？何が良かった？
シューマイか
で、
な。
給食を通じてですね、食への関心を高めてもらって正しい食習慣を身につけることを目的としています。自慢できるところは最新の設備と地域人材の活用だと思っています。最新の学校給食衛生管理基準に対応したですね、衛生的な設備と、あと空調の設備と、職員が働きやすい環境であります。皆さん、児童生徒のために一生懸命働いていただいておりまして、そうですね、こちらの施設の原動力の一つとなっています。
Work in the kitchen begins at 5:30 a.m. with hundreds of volunteers cutting vegetables and peeling steamed potatoes by hand. During Baba Milan, 2,500 volunteers need to help prep and cook the festival meals. But that isn't something Banu Prakash, who's head of the bread department, is worried about.
तो कितनी भी सेवा होती है तो हम देखते हैं कि समय पे सेवा के जो सहयोगी है वो भी मिल जाते हैं.
The cut vegetables are loaded onto crates and wheeled into the main kitchen, where they're washed again in large metal containers and strained. All of the vegetables the kitchen uses are seasonal and bought directly from farms. and the food is prepared following the Sattvic diet, or the Yogi diet, which is rooted in Ayurvedic practices. Today, the chefs are cooking rajma, vegetable sabzi, chapatis, and teplas. While most of the prep work is done by hand, some vegetables are processed using machines. Crates of tomatoes are pureed and spinach is chopped finely. On the other side of the kitchen, another team uses that tomato puree to make a sauce. They pour 5 liters of peanut oil into a giant pot. Then they mix in whole wheat flour, curry powder, handfuls of cumin seeds, asafoetida, bay leaves, and chili powder. Buckets of pureed tomatoes are poured inside and tossed together with garam masala, a common Indian spice mixture. The chefs then scoop the sauce out with buckets and place it into large metal containers so that it can be delivered to another section of the kitchen. The tomato sauce is rolled to chef Nilesh Bahi, who has been working here for 17 years and is in charge of making rajma, a curry dish made with kidney beans.
वैसे मैं राजस्थानी हूँ, लेकिन यहाँ आकर ही मैं इतना राजमा जो बनता है यहीं सीखा और मैं बनाता भी हूँ अभी, मेरा फेवरेट है। तो काश मैं राजमा बहुत दिल से बनाता हूँ।
He soaks the kidney beans for 10 to 12 hours before boiling them in this pot for 3 hours. Once they're cooked, Nilesh uses a small scooper to examine the beans' tenderness and gauge the broth consistency. When the beans pass the test, he tips the pot and scoops in 400 kilograms of the tomato sauce. He then fills the pot with more water so it achieves the same consistency he had before the tomatoes. This is something Nilesh determines with his eye. On the side, he mixes oil, cumin, coriander, garam masala, asafoetida, gram flour, and chili powder into a bucket. He then pours this into the pot and adds salt. After he adds the first round of spices, he tastes the rajma and decides if it needs more flavor. Once Nilesh approves of the taste, he mixes in finely chopped spinach.
और जो आप देखेंगे बर्तन, जो आप उसका कैपेसिटी 1200 लीटर का है, उस बर्तन में हम लोग जब पूरा भर के बर्तन बनाते हैं, उसमें 7000 लोगों का दाल लिया राजमा बन जाता है पूरा।
Cooking all of this food requires an immense amount of energy. Since 1990, the kitchen has used a concentrated solar array on top of its roof to heat water and generate steam, which can be used to cook most of the food the kitchen makes. The cooked rajma is drained through a spigot into smaller containers, which are then covered and wheeled to the dining halls. One of the most important dishes made in the kitchen is sabzi, a mixed vegetable dish that varies depending on the vegetables available that day. Cooks heat oil in a massive pot along with cumin seeds, curry leaves, and asafoetida. Next, they add turmeric, cut chilies, and chopped bottle gourd. They mix everything together before adding in chopped potatoes, garlic gourd, and cauliflower. Then they add water and season the mix with salt and chili powder. Next come green beans, a pot full of tomato sauce, peas, cut green bell peppers, and shredded carrots. It's finished off with a generous amount of salt. Like every other dish this kitchen serves, the vegetables are taste tested and seasoned accordingly during the cooking process. Once the chef at hand gives the flavor a thumbs up, the mixture is cooked back into the metal pots and wheeled to the dining halls. Bread is essential to every meal. The bread department at the Shantivan complex can make up to 26,000 flatbreads every hour. To do so, bakers first pour 50-kilogram bags of flour into mechanical sifters to remove large clumps of flour.
तो ऐसे 200 केजी आटा हमको 10 मिनट में ये मशीनें गूंद के देती है.
The sifted flour is then taken to mechanical mixers where different types of dough are made. Today, the bread department is making two types of flatbreads, chapatis and teplas. The tepla dough is made by combining water, whole wheat flour, turmeric, chili powder, ground spinach, and fenugreek seed. Once mixed, the dough is wheeled to volunteers who use their hands to roll it into palm-sized balls. These balls are then brought to a team of 200 rollers who flatten them so they can be cooked. Chefs rub the flattened teplas with ghee and slap them onto flat griddles to cook. Together, this team can make 20,000 teplas an hour. On the other side of the bread department, machines are used to make chapatis without fillings. The dough is top-loaded into machines, which chop, flatten and bake it into crispy chapatis.
ये एक मशीन 1 घंटे में 2000 चपाती अपने को बना के देती है. ऐसी 7 मशीनें अपने पास है, तो 14000 चपाती 1 घंटे में मशीन से बनाई जाती है.
Like everything else that gets cooked here, the breads are placed inside metal containers to keep warm and wheeled to the dining halls for guests. In the dining halls, the rajma is served with rice, chapatis, and bhindi masala, a side dish made of okra and spices. During Baba Milan, the Hindu god Shiva, who is recognized as the father of souls, is believed to visit practitioners.
तो बाबा मिलन का मतलब शिव बाबा हमारे यहाँ पे एक साकार मीडियम के अंदर साकार शरीर में आते थे.
सब बाबा के बच्चे, बाबा का भंडारा है, वो भरपूर रहता है, कभी खाली नहीं रहता, सबके लिए फ्री.
Many of the devotees have been coming here for years.
17 वर्षों से हम परमात्मा के साथ मिलन मना रहे हैं. हमें बहुत अच्छा यहाँ फील होता है. जिस सुख शांति के लिए लोग बाहर जाते हैं वो हमें यहाँ प्राप्त होता है. सिर्फ हम नहीं, यहाँ पर हजारों भाई बहन आकर लाभ लेते हैं.
उसके पीछे के भाव है कि यहाँ हर एक व्यक्ति जो आ रहा है वो अपने जीवन को श्रेष्ठ करने के लिए आ रहा है, मन की शांति के लिए आ रहा है.
Imbuing the food with positive intention is one of the biggest responsibilities during the cooking process.
तो जैसे हम सोचते हैं तो हमारी सोच से हमारी वृत्ति बनती है, और जैसे हमारी वृत्ति होती है वैसे वाइब्रेशंस बनते हैं. भोजन में वो वाइब्रेशंस बढ़ते हैं तो खाने वालों के ऊपर भी उसका इफेक्ट बनता है. ये जो भाव और भावना है यही इस भोजन को स्पेशल बनाते हैं. नहीं, भोजन बनता है तो यहाँ देखा जाता है कि ये जो भोजन हम बनाते हैं तो हमारा ये लक्ष्य रहता है कि ये भोजन खा के सब खुश हो जाए और हमको दुआएं दे.
Daily, I'm preparing at least about 3,500 to 4,000, at least for breakfast. Our head count goes up for lunch, so we automatically feeding at least 4,500.
So that's some good pasta right there.
We need a balanced, nutritious meal. This is the powerhouse right here. So this is where we provide you those meals that is going to allow you to get up and be the best that you can be for that day.
Business Insider spent 2 days with Slagle's staff as they prepared for the largest meal of the day, lunch, while following a color-coded system intended to encourage service members to make healthier choices. The 3 main courses are 600 pounds of ginger pot roast, 1,400 pounds of Bombay chicken, and 210 pounds of cheese tortellini with marinara. There's also an assortment of vegetables, short order food, and a salad bar that feeds 4,000 to 4,500 trainees in just 90 minutes. Personnel from all branches of the military train at Fort Sam Houston, many of them at the Medical Education and Training Campus. In 2013, the dining facility was named in honor of Sergeant First Class Wayne Slagle, a distinguished Army combat medic.
Mashed potatoes?
Thank you.
Gravy?
Oh yes, ma'am. I can definitely make my day. I come here about 3 times a day. It's included in my BAS, so might as well. The experience is really cool. All the staff are very nice. I've built a bond with a couple of them, especially for being here for so long, so it's just nice to see those familiar faces here.
Schlegel serves about 66,000 meals each week, about 35,000 to Army soldiers, 18,000 to Navy sailors, and 13,000 to Air Force airmen. All trainees are required to dine at Schlegel for lunch Monday through Friday. To prepare the meal in time for 4,500 trainees, the lunch staff is broken into 2 shifts: the night crew, which prepares the food, and the lunch crew, which cooks, pans, and serves it. For today's meal, prep begins at 8 o'clock the night before.
Java and Teresa, of course, y'all know there's knuckle. I saw it out there. Chicken quarters. I haven't seen the tortellini, I haven't seen the lasagna. I'm gonna go check on that, okay? So y'all do your thing.
Our overnight crew comes in, they cook off the ginger pot roast. It's not fully cooked, but they brown it and cook it off. That way, when I come in, that makes it easier to slice once it's cooled and everything from what they did. And then once we slice it, we go back into the oven. So it's like a whole process.
To prepare the ginger pot roast, the cooks start by unpackaging about 600 pounds of beef knuckle. They move it into pans, season it, and move it all into ovens to brown. While the beef knuckle browns in the oven, the cooks begin placing the chicken quarters on pans, so they're ready to hit the oven when the lunch crew arrives the next morning.
You know what chicken this is?
1,400 pounds.
It's kind of a workout.
Yes.
On the other side of the kitchen, another cook finishes boiling macaroni noodles for the pasta salad.
See, that's some good pasta right there. Good little pasta salad.
Let it sit for about 10 more minutes, it should be cool.
While the pasta cools, the cook begins preparing salad for the salad bar. At the same time, cabbage is being washed and chopped in preparation for the calico cabbage dish. With the pasta cooled, the cook returns to the tilt grill to add in peppers, onions, and seasoning. It's then scooped into a pan and stored in the fridge. After just 3 hours of prep, the cooks move all of the food into the refrigerator for the next shift.
Okay. Well, I might need that for my folks.
The next day, lunch prep begins at 6 a.m. A cook seasons the chicken quarters before sticking them in the oven. While another slices the pot roast.
How long does it take you to slice up all the...
Depending on how much you use, but an hour and a half. About 400 or 500 pounds.
Once it's sliced, the pot roast is placed back into the oven to finish cooking. In a 60-gallon kettle, the marinara sauce is made with 114 pounds of pizza sauce, vegetable oil, and an assortment of seasonings. Once the sauce is ready, it's poured over the tortellini. And placed in the oven to cook. With the main courses underway, 450 pounds of peas, carrots, and cabbage are added to the tilt grill and boiled. While more cooks pan and prep the remaining produce for the salad bar.
It's not really a challenge, or it's not too hard for us, because most of us have been here 10 to 15 and 20 years plus. So it's like we're in the motion of doing this already. We kind of already have this idea of, you know, I know how many soldiers I'm gonna feed. It told me we fed this much last night, so I know to project this head count for the next day.
In the hot kitchen, the chicken is removed from the oven, moved into serving pans, and topped with Bombay sauce. The chicken is moved into warmers to stay at a safe temperature until lunch, while the ginger pot roast goes back into the oven to continue cooking.
I've never met a person before that has not had a sweet tooth. But again, my key word is balance.
Cooks prep the desserts by cutting over 2,000 slices of cake and moving them into individual serving containers. Slagle orders over 1,800 cakes per week.
So our desserts that we provide here at the Slagle, they come in a multitude of combinations. Some are pre-prepared and some that are prepared in the facility. However, we try to cut down on the sugars and the fats, but more importantly, it's all about the taste. So if we can fool them and give them a great taste, then we have won.
In 2022, Slagle Hall served 2.1 million meals.
It's not how much food we serve, it is what is our grocery bill. So our grocery bill is astronomical.
According to Slagle, the mess hall spends $14.2 million annually on the food provided to trainees for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, served 365 days a year. And managing that food is a logistical challenge.
I have dairy Monday through Friday, produce the same thing Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then I have my bread Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday and Friday. So basically there's always something going on with what's coming in or what's going out.
The kitchen at Slagle has 10,000 cubic feet of refrigerator space.
It's a big freezer. I can probably hold to maybe up to $300,000 worth of food. But I vary about 187 to 200,000. My meats will be basically hidden back here where my pallets are. My breakfast items, sausage, pancakes, waffles. This will be all our greens, which is asparagus, green beans, broccoli, peas, corn. It goes all the way to that back wall over there.
As lunch nears, the staff prepares the dining rooms and moves the produce onto the salad bar. An elevator helps them move the food between the two dining room floors. The food is removed from the warmers and set out on the serving line. Outside, trainees begin to make their way to the mess hall. Typically, trainees are required to march into lunch in formation. However, on this day, because of an unseasonably cold Texas morning, trainees were permitted to arrive independently.
Instead of limiting us to just one item, it's cool to have a variety, especially throughout the week. It's not the same thing every week. For me personally, it takes me a little longer to try and figure out what I want to eat for today. But just going through the line, they offer us, I believe it's 2 proteins and then 2 sides. So there's just a different variety of sides. So sometimes it's hard to pick.
You want to try it? You got to try it.
I always do stop at the salad bar as well. Usually to try and add a little bit of extra protein, so maybe some eggs or some ham cubes to my meal.
Serving 4,500 trainees in 90 minutes is no small task. Slagle is broken into 2 floors, each with its own serving lines and dining room that feeds 1,100 at a time each, meaning trainees must eat quickly so everyone can be fed in the allotted time.
Most of the companies we have anywhere between 200 to 300 people. If you're closer to the front of the line, you get a little bit more time. If you're near the end, you don't get as much, but roughly 15, 20 minutes or so for everybody at least. And then, they want you outside ready to go so we can go back to class and, focus on our primary studies and everything.
There's no specific calorie count that we're trying to hit. because we do not tell an individual that you can't come through the line again. However, it has to be balanced.
The menu follows a DoD-implemented program known as Go for Green, which encourages service members to make healthier choices. On the serving line, the food is categorized into 3 groups, each represented by a different color. Green for healthy foods trainees should eat often, such as steamed brown rice. Yellow for foods trainees should eat occasionally, like hot rolls. And red for foods trainees should eat rarely, like gravy.
If you was to ask me why trainees need so much food and why we have to provide the balanced meal that we do, it's because they are not at home anymore. They are not on the couch. They are out here training, getting it in, defending the country that we all love. And in order to do that, you got to have the spirit. We don't provide that, but what we do provide is the fuel and the energy that you need in your body.
Half of the staff is part of Fernando's culinary team. Their job? Feeding all those passengers their 3, 4, 8 meals a day.
You have to calculate that is breakfast, lunch, and dinner, plus snacks, plus at night, plus all 24-hour food all around, and that never stops.
Ship kitchens run 24/7, manned by a culinary team of more than 1,000 people. They dish out over 30,000 meals every single day, and they do it all from compact kitchens on a rocking ship. So how does all this food make it to the plate? Jared's in charge of ordering all the food for the ship's 23 different restaurants. Every week, Jared's got a $1 million shopping budget. All of that is just for 7 days of food. Sometimes Jared will tweak his orders based on who's coming aboard. More kids means more chicken fingers.
That's how the operation runs. So we monitor it on a daily basis, what has been used, what has not been used, and then we adjust our orders accordingly. But by and large, being in Miami, having the same number of people, it's almost the same every cruise.
Once on board, everything is moved along the ship's secret highway. This is I-95, and it runs the entire length of the ship, on deck 2.
We separate all the stores to the different locations that they are supposed to go. We have about 20 different storerooms divided into freezers, fridges, walk-in fridges, and dry stores.
Seafood, meat, vegetables, and fruit are all divided and stored in separate fridges.
If you come towards the end of the cruise, this box will be almost empty with a few fruits that are needed for 2 more days, which we keep as backup stock.
There are also 6 freezers. That's where the 700 pounds of ice cream that'll be eaten each week are stored. Dry goods are stored down on deck 1.
Full of spices, full of chocolate in this storeroom. Coffee. It's nice to be in this storeroom.
An elevator gets the food downstairs. Jared's team checks all of the food for quality control every day. If produce is ripening faster than expected, they try to work it into another meal. For example, overripe broccoli could go into broccoli cheddar soup instead of being tossed. Once inventory is stored, restaurants on upper decks put in food orders with Jared. Chefs will come downstairs, pick up their order, and cart it away to be cooked. That's where this guy comes in.
Any food on board this beautiful ship, anything you eat it, is my responsibility. Wherever you have beautiful potato fry, it's mine. Rice is mine. Pate is mine. Pastry is mine. Salad, shrimp, wherever you eat it, it's my responsibility.
Rijo's team of 280 chefs run the kitchens 24/7. Each chef works 10 to 12-hour days. Contracts typically last 4 months without a single day off.
Some of the people start to working for 8 o'clock in the morning, all the way to 2 o'clock, take a break, come back again 5 o'clock, finish by 9:30. Then other group start to working 10 o'clock in the night, all the way to 10 o'clock in the morning. So we cover day and night productions.
Chefs on board cook up nearly 100 different menus every week. All the menus are developed at Royal Caribbean's Miami headquarters. And every week, chefs stick to the same rotation of menus, cooking up everything from racks of lamb to hand-rolled sushi. The food has to be diverse to match Symphony of the Sea's international passengers, vacationing at all kinds of price points.
We try to please everybody and to make sure that everybody find what you're looking for.
All the cooking happens in 36 kitchens, or galleys as they're called on a ship. There are 12 specialty restaurants on board, costing up to $50 a person. And each of those restaurants has its own small galley. In those tight quarters, chefs crank out the same menu every day. At Jamie's Italian, it's fresh pasta. At Hooked, it's over 2,000 oysters, shucked per cruise. But the largest amount of food is reserved for the main dining room, which spans 3 decks and serves up to 6,000 people a night. eating here is included in your ticket. Before food heads up to the main galleys, it starts in one of the prep kitchens, off I-95. There's a butcher shop.
Butcher, good morning. These are the gentlemen looking after all the meat cuts.
The butcher goes through about 15,000 pounds of beef and 9,700 pounds of chicken each week. There's also a veggie cutting room and a fish thawing box. Lobster is the most popular dish in main dining. The ship goes through about 2,100 pounds of lobster tails every week. Finally, the food heads upstairs to the main galley. The ship's biggest kitchen is broken down by categories: desserts, bread, cold food, and hot food. In dessert, chefs whip up cakes, chocolates, and 100 different types of pastries. Over in the bread bakery, they make 40 different kinds of bread from all over the world, all from scratch. But the real hustle comes just before the dinner rush. 6,000 hungry passengers in the main dining room. Remember Rijo? Before dinner prep starts, he has to approve all the dishes.
Good afternoon. How are you, chef? Good.
Rijo tries each dish and gives his critiques.
We're gonna put a little bit more perno, a little bit more gale, a little bit more herbs. Very, very good. So this is what we're looking for. Aioli. Aioli, we need to put a little bit more for today. Huh? You can see, chef, how we look. Huh? Take a note, don't forget. Huh? That's what we're talking about, right? Beautiful, beautiful. We don't have any challenge, so we're ready to go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Chef, thank you so much, and thank you so much, and look forward to a beautiful night tonight. Thank you, have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.
Chefs take his notes and get cooking. Chefs can see a tally of each dish ordered up on screens. The system also keeps track of how much inventory is used. In the cold room, salads and appetizers like carpaccio come together. In the hot room, chefs dish out soups, sauces, sides, and mains.
We have two kinds of chefs. Chefs working here on the line, which is close to me, plating up, and chefs on the stove cooking. So everything we do is in batch cooking. So basically, we grill a steak there, we pass it over to the pass. The person on the pass is plating it up to the requested temperature. That means always that the guests are getting fresh food, and from an operational point, we don't have any overproduction.
Finally, waiters deliver those dishes to hungry passengers out in main dining. Between the chefs, inventory crew, waiters, and dishwashers, it takes a team of 1,085 people to keep this massive operation going. Together, they cook nearly 11 million meals each year, and they're doing it all on a moving ship.
The ship is rocking, then all the equipment is built to the ship rocket. Then in whatever moment, maybe the ship moves, somebody don't put one brake in one trolley, and you see the trolley flying away. And happen. That's why all the cooks always be the attention with that.
But if crew members are doing their job right, passengers won't even know any of it's happening. They'll just get back to eating their 8th meal of the day. This year, Miami's Hard Rock Stadium is hosting the big game. The stadium and its caterer Centerplate are no stranger to big events. But for Super Bowl 54, things are taken up a notch.
We are doubling the building and everything that we're doing so far.
50% more staff was brought in just for Super Bowl Sunday, including dishwashers, line cooks, inventory staff, and 35 chefs flown in from all over North America. But the staff has to think beyond the game. There are also press events, NFL executive dinners, and the fan experience at Miami Beach Convention Center, which means on top of the 65,000 fans squeezing into the stadium, the chefs are responsible for feeding an extra 150,000 people in just 1 week. While it wouldn't share an exact number, Centerplate does expect millions of dollars in sales for the Super Bowl alone. To get it all done, the culinary team began planning for this event nearly 4 years ago, but it all comes down to the 24 hours before the Super Bowl.
There is a system to the madness. I know people don't believe that, but it is. There is something behind it. So this is how we work Super Bowl. Everything is in order. We kind of have a system. We have orders. We have labels.
Inventory staff receives all incoming produce, starting 36 hours before game day. It's hustled into storage or divided into kitchen fridges. Chefs typically do most of the cooking from 7 kitchens in the stadium. But for Super Bowl Sunday, they had to wheel in 3 extra mobile kitchens and outsource cooking to local vendors in the Miami Beach Convention Center. Main kitchens crank out food for lounges, suites, and concession stands. And in those stands, the staff aims to keep the time between ordering your food and getting it in your hand at 45 seconds.
Now these, what we're doing is we'll pre-cook them and we'll finish them in the oven the day of the game. And we'll keep them in the hot boxes at temperature, and then We'll serve them.
Kitchens are divided up into cold and hot sections. In the cold kitchen, they're throwing together dishes like wedge salads and ceviche. In hot, they're frying up heaps of plantains and chicken wings. Chefs line up rows of turkey sandwiches, labor over vats of lamb curry, and dish out gallons and gallons of baked beans for the sweets. Here, they'll be cooking 10,000 hot dogs alone.
A little bit weary, tons of fun though. I'm a football fan, so go 49ers.
Once cooked, all the food is rushed down the stadium's secret highway, under the stands.
Sorry, I walk fast. Tell me if I'm gonna slow down. We call this the belly of the beast. We are walking through what we call our area when it comes to food and beverage. I'm having a coffee macaroon so I can continue going. Anybody who walks on game day should have between 6 to 11 miles.
All this is in preparation for the biggest food rush, right before kickoff. Food heads up to one of the 85 concession stands and carts in the concourse. While some stands have small grills to finish up cooking, most rely on deliveries from downstairs whenever they get close to running out.
Let's just say that doesn't happen often, but if it does, then somebody calls the radio and then somebody runs really fast.
But with the stadium's massive size and thousands of people clogging up the concourse, deliveries can be tough.
It's a big giant that moves on his own sometimes. Today, you might be selling all the flat pie pizza. Tomorrow, you might be selling all the burgers. So it's all about readjusting and making sure that we manage the expectation.
Upstairs, they're handling smaller tasks, but the same amount of food.
We are in what we call the cold side area for suites. Out of these two kitchens, we fit about 157 suites. Imagine 157 small restaurants. We are in the best kitchen at Hard Rock Stadium. Who is the second Super Bowl? We got two pioneers, 3.
Here, they're slicing up cheese and roasting racks on racks of mushrooms.
Imagine what you see here and cook for 1,600 people for me.
The team cranks out 400 different menu items on Super Bowl Sunday alone. And if one thing breaks, well...
If one oven breaks, it's like a domino effect. Something is gonna fall behind. So you can't take anybody's for granted, especially in such a large operation like what we have here.
And in this game, the size is the biggest hurdle. At a regular restaurant for a regular day, you might order just 2 cases of lobster tails.
Instead of receiving 2 cases of lobster tail, you're receiving 3,000. We just smoked about 4,400, almost 5,000 pounds of pork butts. Right now, actually, I'm bringing about 9,000 cookies, which is crazy. I just called my vendor and I say, I need more cookies.
Luckily, Chef D can rely on others to help make the magic happen. She's hired 40 local vendors to churn out everything from 4,000 popsicles within a week to cake pops, cookies, and bundt cakes for the sweets.
Working 24 hours a day. I have 4 shifts right now. I have to rent extra refrigeration.
This is the founder of Pastries Art, a family-owned bakery in charge of all the desserts for the Super Bowl. And yes, she did get that call for those 9,000 cookies.
Chef D is super funny. We plan and get organized, and then she said, "Oh, by the way, Mama, just so you know, I may order a little bit more cookies." I'm like, "Okay, sure, no problem. How many more?" I don't know, about 2,500 more. And I said, "Sure, Chef, no problem. I got it. And then when I hang up the phone, I'm like, "Oh my God, we have 2,500 more cookies."
It's Center Plate's 15th Super Bowl, but it's Chef D's first.
We are, all of us, bearing ourselves to thousands of fans out there. I always tell everybody, on game day, find a little moment, and look down into the bowl and find yourself thinking, pat yourself in the back and say, I did that.
Mitchell Hall has an annual budget of $20 million. In 2022, the dining facility purchased 546,000 pounds of meat, 1.2 million pounds of produce, and 21,000 gallons of milk, which were served across 3.5 million meals. Today's dinner is not just any meal. It's the Cadet Wings Recognition Dinner.
Recognition is a 3-day event where the freshman class is put through many stressful events to test their mental and physical stamina. Once you make it to recognition dinner, it's a sense of accomplishment. The freshman class is recognized as a fully qualified members of the Cadet Wing.
To celebrate, the staff is preparing 4,000 steaks, 1,600 pounds of tortellini, and 788 pounds of orange glazed carrots. The first steak hits the grill at 1 o'clock, to ensure the meal is ready on time, 5 hours before dinner is served. The steaks move in an assembly line fashion. They're removed from their packaging, then placed on the grill, where they're seasoned and then cooked. They're then moved into a pan, wrapped, and wheeled away to be stored in hot carts to keep them warm until dinner. At the other end of the kitchen, the pre-made pasta is poured into pans, topped with pesto Parmesan Alfredo sauce, and moved into a rotating oven to cook. Preparing this much food requires an incredible amount of organization, but not just today. A meal like this is planned out more than a month in advance.
We really want to work 6 to 8 weeks ahead and commit, we call it committing, our menu for that far in advance. Sometimes we'll find that in 8 weeks there's a holiday meal, so we need to make special preparations and changes to the menu for any special events that might be coming up.
And the recognition dinner is one of the most special meals of the year. In the front of the house, the dining area is prepped for the cadets. Back in the kitchen, onions, carrots, and mushrooms are cooked with a medley of seasonings for the vegetarian beef stew, while the rest of the staff strains 788 pounds of vegetables and moves them into hot carts for dinner service. As cadets begin filing into the dining hall, freshmen, known as fourth-year cadets, typically have to pass out plates and silverware for the table. After that, the fourth years read and study the Air Force Academy handbook, known as Contrails, as they wait to be seated, while upperclassmen quiz them. Tonight, the fourth years become fully recognized members of the cadet wing and will no longer have to perform these duties.
So during the year of freshman year, we're required to come in here, and after everything's set up, we have to hold our contrails at the position of attention and study them. So they make us do this, to form discipline because we're standing at attention, holding our arms up. So on Saturday night, it's a fun tradition to come in and have your upperclassmen do that with random objects.
0 grams, potassium, 160 milligrams, 4% sir.
And then you can ask them questions like they would with us, with our knowledge. We're like yelling at them in a fun manner, and it's just a really cool experience, tradition that we do.
Before dinner ends, the waitstaff brings out Mitch's Mountains, a dessert made earlier in the week by upperclassmen, just for today's occasion.
The Mitch's workers came in and they brought us these boxes, and we're like, oh, what's that? And then they open them, and it's just this pile of dessert. And so it's pound cake on the bottom, topped with a bunch of scoops of ice creams and whipped cream and cherries, and American flags on top to celebrate our country. And so that was one of the cool experiences for us as freshmen.
After the meal, the staff in charge of the recognition dinner head home. In just 8 hours, a fresh team of cooks will arrive to prepare the next meal.
Good morning. Our head count for today has gone back down. We had to increase because of the weekend for recognition. So breakfast, we have scrambled eggs, bacon, and the roundabout hash browns. Let's have a good shift.
This morning, the cooks only have 2.5 hours to prepare breakfast for 1,500 students. It's a smaller meal because, unlike most lunches during the week, cadets aren't required to attend. But it's still a challenge to finish on time.
The biggest challenge that we have right now is making sure that we have enough staff on hand to make sure that the job gets done on a daily basis. We are open 7 days a week, and we do serve 3 meals per day, so the work never stops.
Like many other kitchens, Mitchell Hall is still recovering from a staffing shortage caused by the pandemic. The 8 cooks on staff for this meal boil 375 pounds of pre-cooked scrambled eggs, heat up 90 pounds of bacon, and cook 560 pounds of hash browns in an industrial-sized fryer known as the Monster.
As our staffing dwindled, we've had to go to a lot of pre-done convenience items. For instance, boil bag mashed potatoes, boil bag mac and cheese. It's a very time-saving opportunity for us with the short staff that we have.
It's a proven method for serving large quantities of nutritious food with only a handful of cooks. The staff will spend the majority of their time transferring breakfast items into pans, where they will be set on the serving line for cadets to grab and go, or dine in. But just as breakfast is being served, lunch prep is already underway.
So lunch today, the cadets are getting what we call the California burger. They're getting waffle fries today. Again, they get run through our monster deep fryer as well. And we got the lettuce, tomato, onion kits that come in fresh, and those get placed on the table as well.
On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there's no room for error in preparing the lunch meal. All 4,000 cadets are required to dine in at Mitchell Hall, and they're only given 20 minutes to eat.
There's only about a 30-minute window that they have between classes. Then right after that, they're going to another class of military training. So there's only a small window built in for them to eat in Mitchell Hall.
That limits their options. We can't provide endless options in a meal like that, so they do get their one main option. We usually have a lean protein option for them, and then we have a vegetarian option, and that's it. Where at like a traditional college, you're gonna go in and you're gonna have different types of cuisines available. We don't have that necessarily here. I think it's just the scale that we serve on is the biggest difference in how we provide food to our cadets.
Prepping the burger patties for 4,000 cadets takes about 4 hours. Cooks start by laying out the pre-cooked patties on a tray before moving them into the oven to heat up. In another part of the kitchen, cooks work together to feed 1,700 pounds of waffle fries into the deep fryer conveyor belt. As the fries exit, they are immediately put into pans that are later loaded into hot carts. Meanwhile, vegetables are boiled and seasoned in 2 100-gallon kettles.
So what we have here is our 100-gallon steam-jacketed kettles. We cook a very diverse amount of product through here. Right now we're doing Italian vegetables. That's one of the vegetables for lunch service today. Typically on veg, we'll do about 200 pounds worth of vegetables for a lunch service.
On the lower level of the kitchen, staff works to wash, chop, and pack fruits and vegetables for meals planned later in the week. Prepping food days in advance allows staff to seamlessly serve thousands of required meals.
There's a buffalo chicken wrap, buffalo chicken tenders for vegetarians, waffle fries.
But even more crucial to their efficiency is planning the menu weeks in advance and storing the meals in the dining facility's 20,000 square foot warehouse.
When we are ordering foods, that order goes in all at the same time for the whole week. They get put into a category, and depending on that category is the day that they arrive.
Once everything comes up the elevator, we'll separate it and take it to wherever it needs to be. We have 4 storage departments: the warehouse, the freezer, meat, and dairy.
While the warehouse staff takes inventory and stocks next week's food, the kitchen staff is wrapping up lunch, moving the last few batches of food onto warming trays. Outside, cadets get into formation for the dine-in lunch, which is mandatory 3 days a week. The Air Force Academy band begins playing as the cadet wing marches toward Mitchell Hall.
2,500 men in the making march en masse to mess for meals like Mother never made.
Since the Air Force Academy was established in 1954, cadets have been required to march into lunch. Once inside, fourth years set the table and serve the food.
We set out all the plates, we set out forks, knives, and spoons if they're needed. I was at the position called the cold pilot. I pour the waters and set that all for the table. And then the person next to him is called the hot pilot, which he would get all the food ready, everything, the meat, the vegetables, and the carbs. He would set that for each freshman and every upperclassman.
Today is the freshman class's first lunch since recognition, where those responsibilities no longer fall on them. They dine like the rest of the cadet wing.
It is impossible to meet 4,000 cadets' nutritional needs and food likes and dislikes. And so really it's working on them on an individual basis, just emphasizing the importance of regular eating and how that affects both not only their academic performance, but their physical performance as well.
the Air Force Academy follows the nutrition standards outlined by the U.S. military, which requires its most active members to eat up to 4,700 calories a day for men and 3,000 a day for women. Mitchell Hall provides as much as 5,000 calories in a day, not including food from Falcon Express, the grab-and-go station inside the dining hall.
I order every single item that goes into there, so I try to balance it out too with things that are good and healthy for them, that provide a lot of energy and nutrition, with some fun things as well, like Cracker Jacks and potato chips and stuff like that.
At 12:15, lunch comes to an end. Cadets clear their tables and head to their next class. The waitstaff begins cleaning the tables and resetting the dining area. Back in the kitchen, the cooking staff starts prepping for dinner, which will be served in 5 hours.
Preparation for the soup begins the day before the festival. First, the enormous pot gets cleaned by a team of volunteers who stand inside it to jet wash and scrub every square inch. Once cleaned, the pot is moved into the cooking area with a crane, where it's filled with water and covered with a lid.
この大鍋は3代目鍋太郎っていう3代目の鍋でして、平成30年、5年前に作ったんですけども、直径が 6.5 メートルあります。で、高さがだいたい 1.7 メートルぐらい。で、重さが4トン。
In another area, more volunteers prepare 4 tons of taro, a starchy root vegetable native to Southeast Asia.
佐藤拓也と申します。里芋屋の佐藤農園を営んでおります。明日の日本一の芋煮会の大鍋、あとは会場に使う里芋をここで青年部の方と自己委員会の方と一緒に芋を洗ってで積み込む作業をやっています。
The fresh taro is removed and washed as quickly as possible, so it doesn't change color and spoil.
この作業は小麦粉と袖と力がいるので、いろんな変色があるので、冷蔵車でずっと冷蔵しておかなきゃいけない部分で、すごくデリケートな作業なので、そこはやっぱりいないと短時間で持っていく。あとは
Once all of the taro is prepped, it's wrapped in plastic bags and stored in a refrigerated truck overnight. Inside the prep kitchen, Hota Miyake, the head of the festival's cooking department, oversees a team of students who are in charge of washing and cutting 3,500 green onions.
こちらで切ってるネギはだいたい300キロ、当日大鍋で使用する、半分ぐらいになりますね。ネギを切るのにこの大量な量を切ったことがないんですけど、切ってみるととても目が痛くて大変だと思います。
The cut green onions are also stored in plastic bags and refrigerated overnight. At 4 a.m. the day of the festival, the cauldron's lid is removed so volunteers can start adding ingredients. It's a laborious process to fill the cauldron, so 20 chefs form a line, relaying bags of taro and konjac up the stairs and into the pot. The taro gives the soup a nutty flavor, while the konjac, with its dense jelly-like texture, thickens it.
家庭いろんなご家庭でいろんな味付けだったり具材があるんですけども、それにやっぱりきのこが入ったりとかごぼうが入ったりとかいろいろご家庭で味が違うんですけれども、これはかなりシンプルな芋煮の味付け食材になっています。
Once those ingredients are added, 2 chefs use long wooden stirring sticks to mix them together. Around 6 a.m., volunteers build a fire at the base using 6 tons of wood.
はい、それでは皆さん点火します。
Once the fire is lit, a Shinto prayer is held for the festival to go on safely and without problems. When the water starts to boil, the cooking can finally begin. The first step is to season the mixture. Chefs use a crane to lift 700 liters of soup stock next to the pot. The stock is made from soy sauce and dashi, which is then poured inside. Next, working in unison, they add 90 liters of sake, and 200 kilograms of sugar. Finally, when the taro is tender and cooked, the beef and green onions are added. Because of the cauldron's size, 2 excavators are needed to help mix the ingredients and blend the flavors. But before these machines ever touch the soup, they're disassembled, cleaned and relubricated with butter. After 3 hours of cooking, the soup is ready to be served at 9 a.m. The excavators scoop the soup and pour it through a funnel into smaller pots, so volunteers can portion and package the soup for hungry festival goers. In 2018, the NYC Festival set the Guinness World Record for the most soup distributed in 8 hours, serving 12,695 people.
笑顔になって芋煮を食べて笑顔になって帰っていただくっていうのが一番私の楽しみかなというふうには思っています。
The tradition of imoni parties in Yamagata City started more than a century ago.
その船頭たちが荷物が運ばれてくるのを待つためにちょっとみんなでちょっとご飯を食べようということで始まったのが芋煮会で、それがだんだんと一般の方々にも普及してみんながそういうふうに河原に集まって芋煮をしようという動きになってきてるんだと思いますね。だからもう今ではもうソウルフードみたいな形になってますけど。
Now, 100 years later, the tradition of cooking this hearty soup on the riverbank remains strong and attracts people from across the country.
3時間ぐらい新幹線で3時間。でも季節になるとね、材料買って作ることはあります。家で美味しいです。そうですね。結構毎年来てます。山形のやっぱソウルフードで、時期になればもう河原中。煙が立ってそっちこっちで芋煮やってますんで、はい。
The process begins at 4:30 a.m. when Ochun and his team start prepping ingredients for the day's menu. Chefs begin by washing and cutting 40 kilograms of white onions and 20 kilograms of green onions for the mapo tofu.
장난 아니게 너무 양파가 좀 많이 매운 편이라 이렇게 좀 많이 눈물을 흘려요. 지금 이만큼 요리사들이 좀 많이 힘들어요.
그 크기에 맞아야지 도시락에 들어가서 예쁜 모양을 낼 수 있기 때문에 그 크기로 자르고 있습니다.
Next, carrots are peeled, cut, and added into the same container as the white onions. Once the vegetables are prepped, it's time to start unpacking the tofu.
하루에 40판 정도 입고가 됩니다. 입고되는 걸 3명에서 재료 손질을 하고 있습니다. 이걸로 약 도시락 1,500개 정도 예상하고 있습니다.
The tofu is cut into cubes and loaded into metal trays, which are then wheeled into a large steamer.
아무래도 깨질 경우가 많으니까 저희가 쪄서 조리를 하게 되었습니다.
While the tofu is steaming, chefs start cooking the other ingredients for the dish in a large cast iron wok. They add red pepper oil and stir-fry the green onions and 10 kilograms of pork together until the meat cooks through. Chefs then add in the basket of white onions and carrots, as well as large ladles of doubanjiang, a savory Chinese bean paste made from fermented broad beans, chili peppers, and soybean. They season the mixture and add ladles of starch water to help adjust the consistency. Finally, once the tofu is done, it's drained and mixed into the wok using a metal shovel.
이 삽은 특수 제작된 삽이라서 땅을 파거나 그런 삽으로 이용되는 삽이 아니라 조리로 이용되는 삽으로 만들어져서 안전하고 드실 수 있습니다.
And that's not the only thing that's custom in the kitchen. Chefs use a special machine that supplies and drains water to wash about 120 kilograms of rice at a time.
쌀은 총 3번 씻고요. 기계는 21대가 있고요. 개수로. 그 다음에 약 900인분 정도. 네, 이렇게 나오고 있습니다. 한 솥에 50인분이 나오고요. 그 다음에 소요 시간은 밥이 전원을 누르고 동시에 30분 정도 뒤에 밥이 완료가 됩니다. 물 양은 쌀의 한 80% 정도 물 양을 맞추고 있습니다. 아무래도 80%다 생각하고 하면 부족하기 때문에 저희가 손을 넣어서 그렇게 물을 잡고 있습니다. 물 양은 손의 손가락 끝나는 부분까지 저희가 물 양을 잡아서 그렇게 조리를 하고 있습니다.
The next order of business is making chili japchae.
고추 잡채에는 고기 20kg, 피망 10kg, 파프리카 20kg, 양파 10kg, 굴소스 3kg, 설탕 1kg, 그 다음에 후추 500g 이렇게 들어가고 있습니다. 고추기름에 고기를 볶다가 그 다음에 야채 넣고 센 불에 볶다가 가진 양념을 넣고 빠르게 마무리하면 됩니다. 고추 잡채 같은 경우에는 1시간 20분 정도 소요가 됩니다.
While the japchae cooks, chefs start prepping the cucumber and wild chive salad. 40 kilograms of cucumbers are sliced before being pickled.
절이는 이유는 고객들에게 음식이 갔을 때 물이 흥건하지 않기 위해서 저희가 절여서 지금 제공하고 있습니다. 음식을. 절인 다음에 물기를 완전히 제거하지 않으면 다시 물기가 생겨서 지금 완전히 물기를 제거한 후에 양념을 넣어서 버무려서 나가고 있습니다. 오이가 40kg, 달래가 10kg, 그 다음에 물엿 300g, 설탕 600g, 간장 600g, 그 다음에 멸치 액젓 100g, 참기름 100g, 네, 이렇게 들어가고 있습니다. 1시간 10분 정도 소요가 되고 있습니다. 지금 마늘쫑 깨무침을 준비하고 있어요. 그래서 지금 데치고 있는 중이고요. 네, 지금 데쳐서 지금 나오고 있는 상태입니다. 지금 꺼내서 간장 900g, 설탕 600g, 물엿 300g, 마늘 300g, 참기름 200g 이렇게 졸여서 전분 쳐서 같이 묻혀서 나가고 있습니다.
Next, the kitchen prepares crab egg soup.
게살 계란탕에 계란 20판, 게살 20kg, 그다음에 팽이버섯 20kg, 그다음 참기름 200g, 굴소스 300g, 소금은 일단 게살 계란국에는 육수를 먼저 내고요. 육수에는 멸치, 디포리 이렇게 넣어서 육수를 볶고요. 끓으면 다 건져내서 안에 계란이랑 넣어서 농도를 먼저 잡고요. 전분은 농도 잡고 게살이랑 팽이버섯 이렇게 넣어서 마무리를 하고 있습니다. 게살 계란국은 끓이는 시간까지 포함해서 2시간 정도 소요가 됩니다.
For dessert, the chefs are reheating flour buns.
꽃빵 1000개 필요하고요. 꽃빵은 저희한테 냉동 상태로 입고가 돼서 다음날 기름에 튀겨서
Once fried, the buns will be drizzled with condensed milk and topped with almonds. When everything is cooked, employees fill small individual containers with rice and crab egg soup. And scoop portions of the other 6 dishes into a divided tray. Each of these lunchboxes cost 7,000 won, or about $5. After 10 hours of cooking and packaging, the lunchboxes are then put into insulated containers and delivered to offices around the city that have subscriptions.
안녕하세요. 드시러 왔습니다. 감사합니다. 네, 맛있게 드세요.
뭐 전체적으로 다 괜찮은데 특히나 뭐 저는 마파두부 쪽이 괜찮게 느껴지네요. 아무래도 뭐 직장인들 고민거리야 뭐 매번 똑같겠지만 점심 뭐 먹는지가 제일 덜 수가 있고 이제 맛도 이제 퀄리티도 괜찮으니까 지속적으로 이용하고 있습니다.
신선한 재료로 다양한 반찬들을 맛볼 수 있는 게 좋았고요. 그다음에 회사 생활할 때 나갔다 들어오는 거 귀찮은데 바로 점심을 배달해서 먹을 수 있다는 게 좋은 것 같습니다.
This mega kitchen is located in Bangalore, the capital of India's southern Karnataka state, and staffs 230 workers across 3 floors. We start on the top floor, where all of the food is cleaned, cut, and prepped. Every day, workers prepare the following day's raw ingredients, and then store the food in a cold room that can hold up to 5 tons of food.
On an average day, we use about 25 ingredients in this kitchen. And one very important aspect in Akshaya Patra is the menu design.
Today's menu includes vegetable biryani, an Indian rice dish that the kitchen prepares with a mix of vegetables and a house blend of spices. Workers begin by running the crates of prepped vegetables through these cutting machines.
So because we are preparing large quantity of food and we have to do it very quickly and we have to do it very cost efficiently, we extensively use a lot of technology.
This batch of biryani contains tomatoes, green peppers, cabbage, carrots, potatoes, and squash.
If you look at these crates, every meal which goes to a child at least has minimum 50 gram of vegetable for a primary school child and 75 gram of vegetables for an upper primary school child.
Alongside the vegetables, workers also portion and prepare rice for this dish. The rice is then washed thoroughly with water before it's cooked. On an average day, the kitchen can handle about 7 tons of grains and 5 tons of dairy. The washed rice and pre-cut vegetables then move through a chute that connects to the second floor. This simple use of gravity is one of the key components of this facility, as it reduces the amount of manual labor and keeps things clean. The ingredients land into 51 of these stainless steel cauldrons, where the cooks use massive stirrers to mix everything together. Workers then close the lids and utilize a 2-ton boiler that generates steam to cook the food.
So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically an hour to make, and 2 to 3 hours to cook. So biryani takes typically right from pre-processing to finishing it. And the cauldron which you see here can feed about 1,000 children.
For food safety and cleanliness, the vegetable biryani is temperature checked and logged. And next to each cauldron, a small stainless steel vessel stores a sample of each batch, which is then tested 24 hours later for microbial growth. Once a week, children receive their lunchtime meal with a sweet treat.
And here, moong dal payasam is being made. Moong dal payasam is a dessert, and children love dessert, being youngsters. So each of these cauldrons can handle about 1,200 liters of dal or lentils.
1,500 pounds of lentils drop down into each of the 6 cauldrons used to cook the dish. Milk and raisins are also added for texture and creaminess. Finally, jaggery syrup, which is an unrefined natural sweetener made from sugarcane, gets stirred into the cauldrons.
Typically, moong dal payasam takes about 1.5 hours to 1 hour 45 minutes, right from boiling the moong dal till the final dessert is made.
Once the vegetable biryani and moong dal payasam are finished cooking, workers transfer the dishes from the cauldrons into these carts, which are then taken to another large chute that connects to the ground floor. The food drops down, then gets portioned and packed into individual vessels for distribution.
These are food grade vessels. Each of the vessels can handle food for about 85 to 100 children. And one of the important cornerstones of Akshaya Patra is hygiene and safety. So you can see each vessel where food is going to be stored is getting washed or cleansed with steam.
Then they're passed down a conveyor belt and get loaded onto Akshaya Patra's custom-built buses called Buses of Hope.
These are insulated vehicles which keep the food warm. Large quantity of food goes in each vehicle. Over a period of time, Akshaya Patra has developed logistics ability. So for example, from this kitchen, we have about 32 vehicles. We handle about close to 650 schools, and we are feeding about 75,000 children every day, though the enrolled strength is about 110,000 children.
And that is just a single kitchen. When you include the 64 other locations across India, they feed over 2 million children daily.
It had a very modest beginning. We started serving 1,500 children in the outskirts of Bangalore city in the year 2000. And gradually, we saw there were more and more requests from the headmasters of the schools who would write to us and say, "We see your vehicle carrying food pass in front of our school. Can you please stop and feed our children?" And when we saw these requests, we kept increasing and scaling up our program. And that's how today in Bangalore city, we serve about 200,000 children.
So how does Akshaya Patra get its funds to pay for all of the free food they provide?
So we get a certain amount of support from the government. We top it up with some more money that we raise from individuals and foundation to ensure that the meal we give to the children is hot, nutritious, safe, tasty, so that children are delighted to have a meal at noontime.
Today, they serve 19,000 schools across 14 states and 2 union territories in India. Kitchen staff will create menus based on the students' preferences and feedback by area. For example, Akshaya Patra's kitchens in northern Indian regions can expect foods like roti or flatbreads. In southern India, rice is more widely eaten as a staple food, and the children love the rice-based dishes prepared by the foundation.
నాకు బిసిబెళబాత్ అంటే ఇష్టం ఎందుకంటే చాలా బాగుంటుంది. బిసిబెళబాత్ నాకు అమ్మమ్మ చేసినట్టు అనిపిస్తుంది.
another important aspect of Akshaya Patra is we want to give what otherwise their mothers will give to them if they are at home and the mothers had resources. Of course, no one can replace a mother, but Akshaya Patra tries to come as close to what a mother can cook.
ನನಗೆ ಪಲಾವ್ ತುಂಬ ಇಷ್ಟ. ಬೀನ್ಸು, ಕ್ಯಾರೆಟು, ಆಲೂಗಡ್ಡೆ ಅಜ್ಜಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಟೇಸ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಸರ್ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ.
You know, you cannot run a big program of this kind in a mechanical, official manner. All of the personnel involved in the Akshaya Patra program come with a deep commitment of compassion and kindness for children. And so it is that compassion that keeps us very highly motivated day after day to see that we do our tasks and duties with a lot of heart.
The day begins with making the ice creams as base, which contains 120 pounds of dark chocolate chips and 100 pounds of cashew butter. Manny and his team start by pouring the bags of dark chocolate chips inside a heated mixer. They add in large buckets of warm water and constantly stir the chocolate for an hour until all of the chunks have dissolved into a liquidy mix.
So this is when you know that the chocolate is ready, completely melted to be, mixed with the rest of the ingredients.
The melted chocolate is then pumped through this tube into a holding tank, which continues to mix the chocolate so it doesn't harden. Next, Manny creates a mixture of stabilizers and salt. The combination of the two helps the ice cream stay together and form smaller ice crystals when it's eventually frozen. It also gives the ice cream some softness. But according to Abby, adding too much stabilizer can be a recipe for disaster.
If you have too much stabilizer, it melts really quickly. It becomes really chewy. If you have too little stabilizer, it's really hard. It's hard to scoop, it's hard to eat. So having not only the right amount of stabilizer, but the right type of stabilizer is really important.
They add more water to the mix and continue stirring it to maintain the smooth consistency before adding in 50 pounds of invert sugar.
Invert is sweeter than sugar, and it really helps bring a nice soft mouthfeel to the ice cream, and not let it get too icy and not too sweet, but sweet enough that it's delicious.
Next, it's time to turn cashew butter into cashew milk.
So we're using cashew concentrate. It's pure ground cashew, and we're using this as 50% of our base. This is our protein. This is what gives it that really rich dairy-like texture and flavor.
100 pounds of cashew butter is scraped out of these buckets into the mixer and combined with cold water. Because there isn't any dairy in this ice cream, all of the fat needed to give it its structure and texture comes from the cashew butter. And while many other nuts like almonds or macadamias could be used, Abby and her team prefer using cashews because of their creaminess and more neutral flavor with chocolate.
We found that adding water to the cashew concentrate gave it a creamier texture. We don't want it to be too thick because then you're just tasting cashew. We want it to be really creamy.
And you don't want to get any piece of chunks of the cashew. So that's why it's supposed to be melted the right way. So this is about the same thing like when we melted the chocolate. If you see there's no chunks on the spatula, then you know it's ready. It's ready to be mixed with the other ingredients, and we're almost done to start running.
The final mix is then pumped into this holding container before it's frozen and aerated.
A really important part of the vegans is that it has to move. Because if it sits, it can congeal. So we're moving it right now. We have to keep it agitated until we can spin it and it'll stay in the ice cream form.
At first, the ice cream comes out liquidy. But once it starts to freeze, they begin pumping it into these 3-gallon cartons.
So that's ready. That's ready.
They add chocolate chips by hand for the first few cartons, while another employee adjusts and fills a fruit feeder that will add in the right amount of chips at a steady rate. As it's pumped through these pipes, the mix is combined with one of the most important ingredients. But it's something you can't see. It's air, and it makes up around 20% of the total volume of this ice cream.
Air is what makes or breaks ice cream, in my opinion. The air creates volume, it creates texture. It's one of the most important ingredients, actually.
Each carton is weighed, then wheeled into a blast freezer where it's kept to harden and wait for final delivery. At Oddfellows Domino Park location in Williamsburg, they sell around 60 gallons of ice cream every week and offer over 20 flavors. From wasabi chocolate chip to mango sticky rice, the flavors are non-traditional and draw a unique clientele.
Our customers are super adventurous, and they know that when they come into our ice cream shop, they can get cookies and cream ice cream, but they're also super excited to try our more odd flavors, and that's what brings them in, that's what brings them back.
It's actually delicious.
But sometimes people just want a traditional flavor that's slightly different, like the vegan chocolate chunk.
So I'm new to the vegan ice cream scene, and this is a lot better than what I expected. It still has like the creaminess and the richness that you would get from like your typical traditional ice cream scoop, but it has like a lightness to it as well, which is really nice. And you get some really nice chunks in here too. Can't say no. So yeah guys, come to Oddfellows, get your vegan ice cream.
With the meat, which owner Kazim Peshenek sources specifically from the hind legs of dairy calves from the Kazilkahaman district in Ankara.
Yani bizim döner kebap için en iyi kısım süt danasının arka butu. Zaten arka but olması çok önemli. Özellikle de genç danalar, yani yaklaşık 1 yaşında civarında genç danaların zaten etin renginden de belli olur. Pembe olur, esmer olmaz. Yaşlı danalardaki esmer olur.
Kitchen staff use these special knives that are thin and long to slice the large portions of meat into thin, flat pieces.
Yani normal bir mutfak bıçağı tabii mümkün değil. Yani bu butlar tek tek ustalar tarafından aşağıda kesiliyor.
Workers fill this entire table with meat, then salt it and cover it with the house marinade.
Yani günlük şubelerimizde her şubede yaklaşık 500 kilo, yarım ton civarında et marine ediyoruz. Yani etin marinesinin içerisinde soğan suyu, süt veya süt ürünleri, ayran, yoğurt vesaire gibi bir de %1 oranında da tuz kullanıyoruz.
They massage the meat to make sure each piece is generously coated. Once they've finished the marinade process, they neatly pack the seasoned slabs of meat into these metal containers. They cover the meat in plastic and move it to the fridge, where it rests for 2 days for the flavors to meld and the meat to tenderize. Once the meat is fully rested, it's time to start assembling the shish. The process starts at 9 a.m. and it takes about 2 hours for cooks to stack around 250 kilos of meat. For extra flavor and richness, they also add layers of tail fat.
Daha sonra şişe takacağımız zaman da %10-12 civarında kuyruk yağı kullanıyoruz. Parça şeklinde ağza gelmesin diye kıyma şeklinde hem ara katlara hem en üst kata kuyruğun yağını almış oluyorsunuz ve lezzetini almış oluyorsunuz. Ama parça şeklinde özellikle bazı kimseler sevmezler, yiyemezler.
Throughout the stacking process, workers repeatedly push down on the layers to keep air out and shave off the outer pieces of meat to shape the doner into an inverted cone. These shavings get added back into the stack with the tail fat, so nothing is wasted. For the final layer, workers flatten the remaining tail fat into a sheet that perfectly covers the top of the stack. Then it's time to light the broiler and let the doner cook for 4 to 5 hours.
15-20 dakika ilk o içini çekme tabir ediyoruz dönerde. İlk yüzü ısınıyor. İşte ondan sonra servise normal başlayabiliyoruz.
The lunch rush usually lasts from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. In this hour and a half span, the restaurant serves 500 to 600 customers.
Yani her gün günlük yaklaşık 1,5 ton civarında döner satışımız var.
Because of Doner's special cooking method, orders can be ready in as little as 5 minutes.
Dünyanın en hızlı yemeği. Hem hızlı bir şekilde pişecek hem hızlı bir şekilde kesilecek. Yani insan için dik bir şekilde en ideal hızlı bir şekilde kesmesi için.
The restaurant cooks a new separate doner for the evening rush. While this ensures the freshness that customers value, it also caters to customers' varying preferences of the doner.
Bu dönerin şimdi farklı yönleri var. Kimisi ilk tıraşını sever. Yani biraz daha tuzlu olur. Ama kimisi de görüntüsü de güzel olsun, yaprak olsun adına yani dönerin daha ortalarında.
Ben daha önce dönerin ilk kesim halini de denedim. O da güzel. Yani sırf onun için gelenler de var çok erken saatte ama ben daha çok akşam saatlerine kalmadan yani daha sulu olduğu zamanlarda, etin suyunu daha fazla olduğu zamanlarda, etin daha yumuşak olduğu zamanlarda tercih ediyorum.
Doner has existed in different forms and under various names in the Middle East for ages. But the ready-to-cut vertical version we see today is believed to have been created in the mid-19th century in Bursa, Turkey by Iskender Efendi. The doner kebab is not Turkey's national dish, but it is among the country's most popular foods. Every day, 900,000 kilograms of traditional kebab is eaten across the country. And although rice and salad are some of the most common additions to this popular street food across the world, according to Kazim,
döner kebabını yemenin en iyi yolu
Peşinek doner makes its lavash with a simple dough recipe of white flour, salt, yeast, and water. Once it's been properly mixed, the pieces are shaped, flattened, topped with an egg yolk marinade, and finally cooked in a stone oven, heated by a wood fire. Each lavash is timed so that it bakes in the same time frame as the doner.
Babamın bir tabiri vardır. Lavaş bizde döner mesela 3 tane sipariş gelir, 3 tane lavaş çıkar.
Once the lavash is cut and plated, cooks top the slices with 140 grams of doner and sivri bibash, a grilled spicy pepper that is traditionally served with roast or grilled meat throughout Turkey. Small plates of sumac onions and fresh salad are also served as sides or additional toppings.
Bence mükemmel ısırık. Pidenizin arasına eti koyduğunuz zaman üstüne biraz biber ekledikten sonra soğanı koyup aldığınız o ilk ısırık en güzel ısırığınız oluyor.
Bunu tam kıvamında ayarlıyor peçenek ekmeğini buranın. İdeal incelikte. Yenildiği zaman da parçalanmayan bir şekilde. Ekmeğini bu şekilde tarif edebilirim.
By the end of the meal, many customers are still hungry for dessert.
Yani bazı müşterilerimiz var hatta şöyle tabir ediyor. Biz döneri sütlacı altlık olsun diye yiyoruz.
The recipe for Peşinek doner's rice pudding, also known as sütlak, took 4 months to perfect. It starts with the milk from Jersey cows, which is boiled with sugar and Osmanşik rice for over 2 hours to reach this thick, creamy consistency.
Sütlaçta da benim için önemli olan nokta o sütün kokusun tadını alabilmem lazım. Yine aynı şekilde etteki gibi rahatsız etmeyecek olması lazım.
Cooks bake the pudding in a water bath inside the same wood-fired oven used for lavash.
Ya biz katkı maddesi olmasın. Yani bir eskiden, çok eskilerden annelerimizin köyde yaptığı sütlaç gibi olsun. İnsanları aradığı bir lezzeti sunalım diye.
Buraya yıllardır geldiğimiz için artık buraya güveniyoruz. Etlerinin sağlıklı ve temiz olduğunu biliyoruz. Çalışanların güler yüzü, bizi kapıda gördükleri zaman samimi bir şekilde karşılamaları da bizi buraya çeken etkenlerden biri.
Hay muchas barbacoas, barbacoa de pollo, barbacoa de res, pero nosotros estamos enfocados que es la barbacoa de borrego. Texcoco es muy famosa de barbacoa. es donde pues prácticamente voy a repetir, donde se encuentran todos los complementos para hacer una buena barbacoa.
Making enough barbecue for the weekend begins at 8 a.m. on Friday. Saul and his team begin preheating the 11 pit ovens by adding large cuts of wood into the bottoms and stripping pieces of cardboard for kindling. Using a lighter, they set the pieces of cardboard on fire and place them into the centre of the wood. When the flames reach the top of the oven, they start offloading fresh maguey leaves and placing them across the ovens. The agave leaves are roasted until they become more flexible. Meanwhile, another team offloads 500 pounds of lamb and places it into the meat prep area. Using a machete, they cut down the larger pieces so the meat can better fit inside of the 3-foot wide oven. All of the ovens El Pica Uno uses are preheated for 7 to 8 hours, but knowing when the oven is ready is based entirely on feel.
Lo que más tiempo lleva a aprender es tener el horno a la capacidad que requiere para poder echar un horno. O sea, tenemos que visualizar. No tengo así algo muy concreto para decirte, sabes que este horno ya tiene.
When the oven is ready, the remaining pieces of wood are removed and a smouldering pile is left at the bottom. Workers then take the pre-roasted maguey leaves and line the ovens. These leaves contain a sap, which will infuse the meat with a sweet, smoky flavour when combined with the wood embers.
Trabajamos 36 pencas, 36 hojas de maguey. Aproximadamente son 2 capas y media de... Son 2 capas y además buscamos la fuga para poner una capa, para que no se dore la barbacoa, la carne.
Once the oven has been wrapped, a large steel pot filled with chickpeas, guajillo chilies, secret spices and water is lowered into the bottom.
Le ponemos en la parte de abajo ya una olla donde va a caer el jugo de la carne, que es el consomé.
They then place a metal grill on top of that pot to hold the stack of meat inside the oven.
La favorita es el espinazo, el curvo, que lo que es el cuello, o la espaldilla. Es lo más suavecito que hay, que es esta pieza, es el cuello. Nosotros trabajamos 11 hornos y un promedio de 40 borregos al fin de semana. En cada horno más o menos aproximadamente 3 borregos caben por horno. 3 borregos más o menos.
When the oven is full, the maguey leaves are folded over the meat and a large metal lid is placed on top and sealed using wet mud and sand.
Para que automáticamente la barbacoa se cose a base de vapor.
The barbecue is left to cook overnight for 11 hours, braising in its own juices and fat. Underneath, the consommé helps steam and infuse the meat with flavour while collecting fat drippings. By morning, the team at El Pica Uno will have a rich consommé to serve alongside the smoky, sweet lamb barbacoa.
Tiene un sabor así como de leña, de humo, por decir. Y le ponemos la penca, la que es la hoja de maguey, y se complementa un sabor inexplicable, muy rico. Tiene que ver mucho en el borrego, seleccionar el animal correcto y darle un buen cocimiento, darle una buena cocción a esa carne, donde quede una textura muy rica.
They start serving the barbacoa at 7:45 a.m. the next day.
A las 8 por muy tardar, ya llega la gente a empezar a consumir la barbacoa, porque llegan cruditos, como lleguen, ya empiezan a consumir su barbacoa.
Using 2 plates, workers dive headfirst into the oven, scooping large pieces of tender lamb into plastic-lined boxes. The meat is sold for about $10 per pound, and customers can choose the cuts they want.
La gente, al cliente le gusta cómo sale directamente del hoyo. La barbacoa ya es tradición, es un platillo pues prehispánico, por decir. Nosotros estamos manejando todavía el tipo de barbacoa que se maneja hace añísimos, Todo está con tabique rojo, con lodo, como lo acaban de ver ustedes.
The word barbecue originated with the Taino people of the Caribbean, who used a wooden platform set over a fire to cook their meat. And barbacoa, which directly translates to barbecue, has been cooked in pit ovens in Mexico for more than 500 years.
Yo vengo de una familia que empezó hace 54 años a trabajar la barbacoa, que es mi papá. Y pues imagínate, yo tengo 48 años, prácticamente pues tengo toda una vida con ellos en este bendito negocio. Y lo que ha mantenido al pica es eso, ¿no? El que ustedes mismos pueden ver cómo sale la barbacoa, qué piezas les gustan y adelante poderla consumir en un lugar muy agradable, que ya son las instalaciones que tenemos hoy. Una buena barbacoa tiene que llevar una buena salsa. Con una buena salsa y una buena tortilla, mira, te digo que se me hizo agua la boca de la barbacoa.
Inside Al Pica Uno, customers buy the consomme to dip their meats into, and vendors sell other condiments and tortillas to complement the barbecue.
Entonces, cuando tú agarras tu barbacoa, no nomás es de agarrarla y comerla, ¿no? Te encuentras en un lugar tranquilo, hospitalario, con gente noble, con gente sencilla de aquí del negocio. Mucha gente le pone su limoncito, le pone su cebollita, le pone sus especies, por decir. Pero una buena barbacoa no hay más que ponerle salsa y una buena tortilla de comal con eso. O sea, a la hora que tú das, te voy a repetir, das la mordida a la barbacoa, al taco, se rompe prácticamente. Y la otra pues le tira un jaloncito.
Esta barbacoa es especial porque es de hoyo. Me gusta llegar al primer hoyo que abren, el que mi familia vea esta parte de cómo se maneja el tema en provincia para cuando lo abren, el sabor, que tiene mucha diferencia entre lo cotidiano en la ciudad, ¿no? No, gracias porque existe este lugar. La verdad es de que a mí me da tranquilidad, qué bueno que no hay red otra vez, aleja toda esa parte de lo que hoy vive la ciudadanía.
Todo, su atmósfera, su gente, su hospitalidad, su comida, especialmente la barbacoa. Y bueno, ya de llegar aquí, ya es como algo mágico, es un lugar mágico.
Even though El Pica Uno usually sells out of its lamb barbacoa every weekend, the restaurant has no plans to cook more than 500 pounds.
Tuvimos una publicidad muy grande y llegó bastante gente, pero desgraciadamente ya no tenemos dónde meter a la gente. O sea, nos saturamos muchísimo. De poder podemos meter mucho más barbacoa, pero ya también vamos a dar un servicio que no podemos llegar a su alcance. Pues no es suerte, no es trabajo, ser constantes, y hasta hoy hemos llegado a tener todo lo que se ha logrado de un gran trabajo.
In the streets, Chef Mohammed is grilling 500 kilograms of shish taouk, a type of grilled chicken which will be part of the main course. In the morning, the chicken is brought to the cooking area after marinating overnight in onions, yogurt, mustard, and spices. The chefs then load them into grill baskets before cooking them over coals.
احنا عندنا 5 شوايات، كل شوايه واقف عليها شيف زي ما حضرتك شايف كده. دوت شيش على الفحم ودوت بانيه مشوي على الفحم. والله بنحتاج ممكن مثلا من 5 ساعات كده عشان خاطر يكون الاكل مثلا جاهز ويجي.
The grilled chicken is then cut in half and put on a metal platter for packaging. In another area of the street kitchen, Chef Hamed is making 170 kilograms of rice, which is easier said than done.
أصعب حاجة بالنسبة لنا إن أنت تبقي شغالة وبتجهزي وبتعملي أكل وأنت صايمة، يعني الموضوع صعب فعلا، صعب إن إحنا مش فاطرين وبنحاول إن إحنا عايزين نطلع الحاجة كويسة، بتست كويس.
While he's unable to taste the food, Hamed makes several pots of rice with garlic, onions, ginger, peppers, saffron, cardamom, cloves, cinnamon, and bay leaves.
يعني الحلة احنا جايبين حلل كبيرة، أنا جايب حلل كبيرة، الحلة بتشيل 15 كيلو. احنا عاملين النهارده اللهم لك الحمد داخلين في ال 11 أذان، ما ينفعش ان احنا نعطل، ما ينفعش ان انا دلوقتي اسوي رز واستنى الحله لما تخلص عشان خاطر اغسلها واسوي فيها تاني.
While the main dishes are cooked in the street, other items like mashi and kebab halla are cooked in 30 different homes by volunteers who have experience making them. They receive their supplies a few days before the event from organizers like Ali Amin.
احنا بنجيب لهم الخامات وكل المستلزمات اللي هم محتاجينها قبليها بفتره، ويبتدوا هم يعدوا للحاجه دي قبليها بيومين 3 ايام علشان يوم 15 رمضان الساعه 2 الظهر يبقى كل الحاجات دي جاهزه.
In her house, Mustafa is making mashi or vegetables stuffed with rice.
فطار المطرية أصلا يعني أنا بقالي معاهم 5 سنين أو 6 سنين على طول، كل سنة في الفطار بعمل محشي. أنا بالنسبة لي أكليني كل يوم محشي أقول لكيش لأ أبدا.
The first step of making mashi is making a tomato sauce.
وبنعمل لها نقلل بصلة وبعدين نحط عليها القوطة وبعدين نسيبها تتسبك وتتقل خالص. بعد كده بقى نحط لها التوابل بتاعتها، وبعد ما بنحضر خلطة التوابل بنحط فوق منها الرز.
After mixing it all together, they finish it off with cilantro. While is doing this, across the street, Huda's son is busy preparing 4 pots of her kebab halla, a type of onion beef braised stew.
أنا عشان نعمل الكباب الحلة ده بستخدم بصل، توابل ملح وفلفل وحبهان وورق لورا وقرفة، واللحمة طبعا بتبقى متقطعة وبس. وبنبتدي بقى ان هو اصلا يعني اكتر حاجة فيه التقليب، يعني بنفضل طول الوقت نقلب فيه لغاية ما يبقى يدي اللون ده، يعني ده اساسي فيه.
Back at house, she is hollowing out the vegetables so they can be stuffed with the rice mixture.
احنا بنحشي الكوسة وفلفل والبتنجان برز الخلطة، والخلطة دي بسم الله ما شاء الله عليها هي بقى اللي احنا عاملينها بالبصل والقوطة والتوابل والخضرة. انا بحب احط على المحشي بهارات وحبهان مطحون وفلفل اسمر وكمون وشويه شطه، بس انا ما حطيتش شطه كتير المره دي عشان يعني في حد مش بيحب الشطه فحرام اذيه.
Once the vegetables are stuffed, she covers them with stock and boils them until they're cooked through.
تقريبا بعمل في حدود 5 كيلو محشي.
But to make enough mashi and kebab halla to feed an entire neighborhood, both of these women have help.
كل سنة كعيلة يعني بنبقى مسؤولين عن الأكلة دي يعني، بس في ناس طبعا كتير بتعمل حاجات تانية يعني. أو في طبعا أنا فوق طبعا بنت خالي برضو بتعمل كباب حلة هناك عند بيت جدي، برضو مرات خالي ومرات خالي التانية هي والدتي أصلا، يعني أنا والدتي أصلا هي اللي كانت بتعمل كباب الحلة، فتحس إن توارثوا الأجيال.
دلوقتي بقيتي متمكنة خلاص.
الحمد لله.
In the early afternoon, volunteers pick up the mashi and kebab halla and bring them to the central kitchen for packaging.
كل بيت بنبقى كاتبين على الحله اسم البيت ده عشان نعرف هنرجعها تاني ازاي.
Volunteers form an assembly line and pack every meal by hand.
بنبتدي ان احنا نغرف من 3 لحد مثلا 5 ونص، بنقعد 2.5 ساعات. في فريق كامل واقف في المطبخ ما بيعملش حاجه الا انه بيغرف.
All of the food is carried through the crowd and placed on 500 tables stretching a kilometer down the street.
احنا كنا عاملينها في 4 شوارع. ال4 شوارع كان فيهم 3 شوارع كانت المعموله المائده صفين، يعني مش صف واحد بس، لا يعني كانت طول الشارع على مرتين. طيب هو الاكل ده كله احنا بنقدمه للناس بشكل مجاني، اكيد مش هناخد من ضيوفنا فلوس.
And when the sun finally sets, the community can enjoy their feast.
طبعا هو اليوم مش مقتصر على اهالي المنطقه بس او اهالي المطريه بس، لا بالعكس اليوم احنا فاتحينه لكل الناس.
والله هنا كلهم متفقين مع بعض وكلنا اهل وكلنا اسره وكلنا يعني رمضان كريم يعني الحمد لله.
عجبتني في الأكل الطاجن باللحمة البصل، وعجبني المحشي، وعجبني كل الأكل اللي كان كويس بصراحة. وإحنا مش عاملينها عشان أكل، إحنا عاملينها عشان تجمع، إن إحنا نبقى كلنا مسلمين مسيحيين كلنا مع بعضينا، وعاملين إن شاء الله كان يوم كويس ويوم حلو، وإن شاء الله عودة السنة الجاية إن شاء الله يبقى أحسن وأحسن إن شاء الله.
إحنا لما ابتدينا في 2013 إخواتنا قرروا إن هم يفطروا مع بعض يوم. المجموعه كلها على بعضها ما كملتش مثلا 10 تنفار ترابيزتين. احنا السنه دي بنتكلم في 3000 فرد ومعديين ال 3000 فرد. الموضوع كل مدى اصعب وضغط.
كل الكلام دوت بسبب الروح اللي حوالينا وزمايلنا ومساعده اخواتنا وامهاتنا في البيت واخواتنا الصغيرين واولادنا. الحمد لله بفضل الله بيطلع احسن يوم، الحمد لله رب العالمين. يمكن يكون يوم بنستناه من السنه للسنه.
The first day of cooking begins with washing and shucking 300 bunches of dried corn husks, so they can be used to wrap tamales the next day. Yesenia Gonzalez Lemus is one of the dedicated volunteers with many years of experience making tamales for the junta.
Pues todo es muy bonito, desde hacer el lavado de hojas. Aquí la verdad a veces nos encontramos con las señoras que a veces tienen mucho tiempo que no nos hemos visto, todo viene con gusto.
While some groups wash the leaves, others strain black beans that have been soaking overnight and transfer them into buckets. These buckets are then poured into 2 giant pots, where the beans are boiled in water with onions, garlic, and lard. The cooked beans are then sent to a mill to be ground into a paste. Across the kitchen, butchers are busy cutting and cleaning 1,200 kilograms of pork and beef. On the second day, large bags of ground beans and masa and nixtamalized corn mix arrive from the mill. The masa and black beans are poured onto large tables where they're mixed with water, lard, salt, and tequesquite, a mineral salt that has been used in Mexico since pre-Columbian times. Once mixed, the masa is taken to another table where it's spread into a flat layer, then topped with black beans. Then workers cut the mix into squares with their fingers and roll them up. These rolls are then passed to another table where they're stuffed inside of the corn husks to become tamales.
Pues nosotros nada más, no hay un cálculo exacto en piezas de tamal. Lo que sí tenemos el cálculo que se hace 1 tonelada de masa con 1 tonelada de maíz. O sea, son 1000 kilos de masa y 1000 kilos de frijol.
Volunteers pile the rolled tamales into crates and carry them to the cooking area. Here, they pour the tamales into 68 oil drums that are lined with paper bags. They fill every drum to the top before wrapping it in a plastic bag, which helps steam the tamales. After they tie the bags, they light wood fires under each drum. The tamales start cooking in the early afternoon and are left until early morning. The next order of business is making mole, a thick, rich sauce made with a blend of ground chilies, spices, and chocolate. The ground mole arrives in 50 kilogram bags, which need to be sifted to remove clumps before cooking. Then the mole is added into giant pots of boiling water, where it's left with expert mole cookers known as moleros. Gustavo Alvarez Jurado, who is the head molero, has been helping make this dish for over 26 years.
Nuestra labor en realidad, como moleros, es venir y sazonar ese mole que ya está elaborado. Y además nos corresponde sazonarlo, cocerlo, guisarlo y repartirlo a la gente que viene a traerlo. Ya depende de mañana domingo cómo vaya fluyendo la gente, cómo vaya viniendo a traer su molito, es como se va a hacer un poquito más de mole, se sazona un poquito más para el día lunes.
Mole flavor varies across Mexico. In Milpa Alta, a sweeter taste is preferred, so sugar is added to the mixture. Making this mole requires constant attention and steering, so it doesn't burn or stick to the pot. Héctor Quintín Mesa is one of Milpa Alta's most experienced moleros.
Es un mole tradicional, pero es que es tradicional de las señoras que dejaron pues la receta. De generaciones anteriores.
While the mole cooks, another massive pot is filled with water and brought to a boil. This pot is what's used to boil all of the meat that was cut the day before. At 2 a.m., the rice is ready to be made. White rice, carrots, crushed tomatoes, parsley and spices are all mixed together and boiled. This year, the kitchen is using 25 pots that can cook 200 kilograms of rice in 30 minutes. And by the end of the night, they'll cook 800 kilograms. Central to these processes is the mayordomo, a role that is responsible for securing all of the ingredients and utensils needed to make the feast possible. This year, the responsibility is being shared by Paulina Jardines and her brother Isaac.
No, de hecho no nos alcanza. ¿Por qué? Porque pues está viniendo la gente, están con diferentes actividades y pues no los podemos dejar solos. Se puede decir que son como 2 noches que no se duerme.
Like mayordomos before, Paulina and her brother have been waiting over 20 years to receive this position and following the footsteps of their mother, Alejandra, who served as a mayordomo in 2001.
Híjole, ser mayordomo es una experiencia inolvidable y además una responsabilidad, ya que pues sí conlleva estar pues tratando con mucha gente diferente y pues tratar de nosotros ser lo más amables posibles, ya que ellos vienen a apoyarnos con sus manitas, que es lo más importante.
Ofrecen su tiempo y pues su dedicación para prepararlo y que salga lo mejor posible. Ya son personas que pues sí se dedican a estar ahí, entonces ellos ya saben qué medida, qué tanto se pone de cada ingrediente. Pues creo que es importante que esta tradición siga, al igual que otras, porque pues a mi parecer sin las tradiciones pues no sé qué serían de nuestros pueblos, ¿no?
At 6 a.m., everyone takes a short break to attend the Mass. After the Mass, the priest goes around the kitchen and blesses all of the food. In a tent, guests check in and write their names on cards to indicate how much money they're going to donate to the mayordomo for the pilgrimage to Chalma. Everyone who pledges money receives a corresponding amount of food, which is indicated on their card. But really, the meal is for anyone and everyone who donates their time, money, or goods for the event. Instead of eating in the kitchen, many people bring their own containers from home and take the food away.
Gracias a Dios y afortunadamente ahorita nosotros todo salió bien. No hubo ninguna cacerola de Dios que se echara a perder o que tirara. Entonces yo creo que es tanto el amor y aunque uno esté cansado no lo demuestra uno porque lo que queremos es seguir, no hasta terminar y que terminemos todo bien.
Todo este dinero recaudado sirve para que estemos allá en los 8 días que se celebra el Señor y la coronación de los nuevos integrantes para la generación siguiente.
Chalma is a major pilgrimage site for Catholics in Mexico, who make the pilgrimage on foot from various parts of the country. The site is also known for miraculous healing powers, and people from all over come to seek blessings and miracles.
Y yo creo que es un compromiso no solo lo adquiere el mayordomo, sino lo adquiere toda la familia. Familia, amigos, compadres, y toda la gente que pues cada año está aquí con la mayordomía. Ahorita están conmigo, el otro año pues estarán con el compañero que va a recibir, ¿no?
Pues hoy es una de las tradiciones más importantes de Milpa Alta porque se reúne pues toda la comunidad en torno a la fe que tenemos al Señor de Chalma.
Para nosotros el Señor de Chalma es nuestro patrón, nuestro Señor, nuestro Padre, como quieran decirle.
Before the Spanish conquest, indigenous deities with magical powers were worshipped here. When the missionaries arrived, they brought their faith and proclaimed a miracle had taken place in Chalma, cementing it as a religious site for Roman Catholics all over Mexico.
Porque, pues, todos los que nacemos aquí crecemos bajo esas tradiciones y costumbres y sobre todo porque fortalecen nuestra fe como comunidad.
Las visitas al santuario de Chalma son la verdad muy bonitas y pues yo creo que todo eso, lo que se vivió fue y el amor al Señor, que pues para mí fue un legado que mi papá nos dejó. Siento que pues todo eso nos motivó a querer estar aquí donde estamos ahorita.
At 9 in the morning, Tony and his team get started making a 33-year-old dough recipe. The mixture is loaded with olive oil, New York City tap water, activated yeast, and 50 pounds of high gluten flour.
So we have it preset for 5 minutes. It's on a low spin cycle, okay? And what we do is we sprinkle salt on top of our flour. Five minutes later, we have our famous dough recipe.
Once mixed, the dough needs to be cut, weighed, and shaped into balls within 30 minutes, so it doesn't rise. For this, Tony relies on the most experienced pizzaiolos at Grimaldi's.
They're cutting each and everything to the same size every day. It's almost like muscle memory at this point where the scale's not even needed, you know? They know what they're doing, and it's almost like a healthy competition down here to race. Like, let's go, come on, keep up with me. I'm rolling. You gotta cut faster, let's go.
Another skill that's hard to master is rolling the perfect dough ball.
So we're rolling the dough and we're making sure that it's a smooth outer layer as well as making sure that there's no air inside. So for example, you know, if you're rolling it and you're just gonna meatball it and you're just gonna put it like this down, it's gonna rise and it's gonna thin out the middle. And then the pizza, when you pick it up, that's when it flops down. So Grimaldi is known for a nice hard layer crust that is the texture. It's the base. It's the most important thing to the pizza. It's, you know, the foundation to the house. No foundation, no pizza.
This batch of dough is enough to make 65 to 75 pizzas, which is just a fraction of what will be needed for the day. Once all of the trays are filled, they're taken across the hall to these fridges.
So this is only the dough that was made last night, okay? So this is getting ready for our first few hours in Grimaldi's, and then we'll start fresh, probably go through the first batch that we made today, and then as well as another 8 or 9 for the night shift.
In 2011, Grimaldi's moved into its current location. The double-story Palazzo building on number 1 Front Street was originally built to be Brooklyn's first safety deposit company. Now, Grimaldi's fridges sit in the same place as the old vaults.
So I think that's really cool that we made them into our own vaults. So basically it protects our gold, and this is our gold right here.
Next, it's time to make the sauce. Large cans of San Marzano tomatoes are poured into buckets, topped with sugar, and blended.
For us, we use a 1-day shelf life, so we're just trying to keep it marinating for a few hours, if not a full day, and it's going right into our pizza. So we like to keep it as fresh as possible. It's nice, thick, and imported tomatoes.
Grimaldi's goes through about 700 quarts of tomatoes every week, or roughly 662.4 liters. Upstairs, 200 mozzarella balls are cut into thin strips, a process that's gone unchanged since opening.
The Grimaldi's cheese is very special. It's made only for Grimaldi's, so nowhere else in the world can get our flavor profile that we're doing on our mozzarella. It is a low moisture, low sodium, UV dried fresh mozzarella, so it can withstand the high intense heat of our oven and be cooked and melt to perfection in a short amount of time.
By the end of the week, Grimaldi's will hand slice around 2,000 pounds of mozzarella. An hour before opening, Grimaldi's restocks its coal so they can relight the oven.
Okay, so right now he's throwing 40-pound bags of anthracite coal into the bottom of our oven chute right over here. So we keep about anywhere from 10 to 12 bags down there at a time. And what we're doing is for at least a day or more, we try and dry out our coal to make sure that it's burning a little cleaner, easier, it's not popping from the inside, you know, on top of pizzas, etc. as it starts to heat up. It makes our stoking process and our oven heat up a little bit quicker too.
The pizzeria keeps embers in the brick oven overnight, so it stays warm.
So right now we have a grate inside of our oven. It's holding our coal up, but he's right now flipping it and getting rid of all the old coal. The reason why we don't clean it out at nighttime because we want to make sure that it stays warm overnight because it's going to take too many hours to heat up our floor.
When the charcoal ignites, the team begins shoveling 200 pounds of coal into the side of the oven. Compared to wood, anthracite coal burns longer, hotter, and with less smoke.
You can't get a gas oven or a wood oven up to 1,000 degrees the way we can. So we're able to get a different, not only flavor profile from the coal, but we're also getting a different profile from the heat and intensity that pizza is going under.
When the doors open at 11:30 a.m., it's all hands on deck to fill orders. To be an official Grimaldi's pie, it needs to be made a certain way. Unlike most pizzerias, Grimaldi's built its pizza cheese first. Slices of mozzarella are evenly placed around the dough, and the gaps are then filled with sauce.
So when it melts together, you're seeing a little bit of both, but you're also getting a bite of not too much sauce, not too much cheese. So that's what we're looking for with Grimaldi's.
Specialty toppings range from hand-pinched Italian sausage to thinly sliced prosciutto and artichokes. And most pies are finished off with a sprinkling of the Grimaldi's Romano blend, extra virgin olive oil, and a few pieces of fresh basil. To help streamline the cooking process, Grimaldi's uses a two-shelf system.
So we have a pre-stretch and then a stretching and cheese section on this side. We're pre-stretching cheese in, throwing them on the first shelf right here. Everyone standing on this side is a topper, so that means they're putting on the toppings, the sauce on, they're finishing it off with the olive oil, the basil, and then finishing it off by putting it on the top shelf. The top shelf is so the oven guy knows that they're ready to go in the oven.
Working a coal oven takes years of experience to master. From memorizing cook times to keeping a consistent heat, it's not easy to make a perfect pie.
So what we're doing is we're loading them in, we're closing the door right away, we're giving it a pop of heat to the bottom of the pizza so we can actually move it around without ripping it or anything like that. What's rare about Brooklyn is that we use this copper stick right here. You know, it's very important with this high heat if you're using a wooden stick. They're just breaking and wearing and tearing and drying out non-stop, especially when you're picking up a heavy pizza. So you can see it's only been about 60 seconds and they're already rising up. So basically I'm making sure that I can pick them up, give them a small spin, and then I'm actually just moving them into position right here.
The high heat means that the pizzas only need a few minutes to cook. Water in the dough evaporates quickly, creating air bubbles and leaving behind a light, airy texture in the crust, while charcoal gives the pizza a charred, slightly smoky flavor and a crunchy texture. Outside, people begin queuing and waiting up to an hour to get a table. And 16 minutes after opening, the first and third stories of the restaurant are practically full. On the dining floor, you'll find servers with over 20 years of experience and a good sense of humor.
Oh, mommy, I'm hungry. Boom. You got it, Papa.
While Grimaldi's has an established clientele, a vast majority of its business comes from tour groups. Since 2005, Tony Muya, who runs pizza tours, has been coming to showcase Grimaldi's pizza.
So if I can describe Grimaldi's in 3 words, it would probably be legendary, authentic, and beloved, because people love Grimaldi's.
The key to making a great pizza is passion. It's love. You take dough, cheese, or sauce by itself, it's just simple objects. But when you're building a pizza, it's a piece of art. So for us, and for myself, it's the passion and love I put into every pizza that makes it special.
Pues llevo más de 30 años en la empresa a cocinar paellas gigantes por todo el mundo.
Soy Vicente Martínez y estamos cocinando aquí una paella de 1.400 raciones para las fiestas populares del pueblo de Quesa.
This is known as the Festival of the Reserve. On the morning of the festival, Vicente and his crew offload and wheel two 2.35-meter paella pans into the town square. When the pans are secure, they get to cooking.
Lo primero que pongo en la paella es el aceite y luego se nivela y ya luego se prende fuego y la carne para sofreírla.
Each paella is cooked with 8.5 liters of olive oil, 75 kilos of chicken, and 30 kilos of rabbit.
Pues estamos sofriendo la carne para dorarla bien doradita, como verás esa ya está. Se sofríe en el centro y luego vamos cambiándola, así se sofríe toda la carne perfecta.
When the meat is done, 40 kilos of frozen green beans, butter beans, and white beans are added into the mix, along with 5 kilos of snails.
Los ingredientes que se utilizan son los típicos de Valencia, de la huerta de Valencia. El pollo, el conejo y las verduras son típicas de Valencia. En cada zona se guisa de una manera, pero la base siempre es el pollo, el conejo y las verduras, lo que es la judía verde y el garrofón.
Once everything is mixed together, 135 liters of water are added into the pan.
Lo que te lleva un poco loco, si tú quieres, es el agua. La cantidad de agua es lo que te puede llevar un poco más loco, porque como trabajamos con leña, la leña, dependiendo de si está más seca, más húmeda, si quema más rápido o menos rápido.
After the water has been added, 60 kilos of a local medium-grain rice called arroz redondo is tossed into the mix. Cooking with wood means that the water and fire need to be constantly monitored so that the rice doesn't burn.
Es un plato bastante difícil de cocinar para la gente que no lo ha hecho nunca, sobre todo porque se hace a leña. De hecho, verás que muchos chefs rehuyen de cocinar arroz.
In Spain, bomba, albufera, and redondo rice are commonly used because they can absorb more liquid and flavor than regular rice without getting mushy.
Pues la paella, como se dice ahora, es una explosión de sabores, carnes, de verduras, el arroz absorbe esos sabores y es una delicia.
Paella pans often come in several diameters, but the general shape is always wide, shallow, and round with sloping edges. This shape is important because it helps the rice cook evenly in a single layer.
Cada vez el arroz está más reposado y mejor. Todos queremos ser los primeros, pero cuando mejor está la paella es al final.
And many Spaniards agree.
Carraos es esa parte de arroz que se pega un poquito entre la paella y el arroz que está así. Y eso lo rascas un poquito y queda de muerte con el resto de arroz.
While everyone enjoys paella, the exact ingredients for what constitutes a true paella is still hotly debated.
A ver, hay arroces y paellas. Paella es la valenciana. Punto.
While the festival is full of joy and celebration today, the origins of its birth are much darker. In 1690, Quesa experienced a devastating outbreak of the bubonic plague, which left only a few members of a single family alive. Resilient, the surviving family gave shelter and food to anyone who moved back to Quesa.
Para conmemorar ese hecho de que la gente volvió a nuestro pueblo y Quesa volvió a nacer, pues símbolo de nuestra hospitalidad como pueblo, pues hacemos 2 paellas gigantes y entregamos el panecillo para repartir a todo el mundo que quiera venir a visitarnos.
Paella is thought to have come from farm workers in Valencia, who used shallow pans to cook rice over wood fires and added in ingredients they could forage or hunt to create a cheap but filling one-dish lunch. Over time, the elites of Spain started to enjoy paella for weekday lunches, and it became more popular across the country. And while paella is now recognized as a traditionally Spanish dish, it wouldn't be what it is today without the introduction of rice by the Moors in the 12th century. Since then, paella has taken on many iterations across Spain, but the classic ingredients of rice, rabbit, snails, and beans remain integral for making a Valencian paella.
Es un lujazo tener a estas personas que nos hacen unas paellas increíbles, de buenas y de sabrosas y abundantes, de todo.
Pues para mí la paella significa el mejor plato que se puede comer una persona. Yo llevo más de 30 años y no me he cansado de comer paella.
Mi parte preferida de este evento es que te puedes juntar con todos los colegas, con los padres y disfrutar de una buena comida junto a todos ellos.
Siempre te falta algo para decir esta paella es de 10. Puedes decir es de 9, es de 9 y medio. Nunca puedes decir que es la paella de 10.
The first day begins with chopping fresh vegetables, unwrapping spices, peeling chilies, and cleaning all of the pots known as degs.
तो ये एल्युमिनियम नहीं बनाते हैं। एक तो साफ सफाई होती है उसमें, दूसरा इसमें लगने का खतरा भी नहीं होता है।
Outside, truckloads of wood are unloaded to fuel the hundreds of pots.
इसके लिए अलग से ही लकड़ आता है। वो होता है या तो अखरोट का होता है या एप्पल का होता है, नाशपाती का होता है। जैसे बागात जो बगीचा होता है उसके पेड़ होते हैं, वही कट जाते हैं और उसी पे खाना बनता है।
Once the pots are set, it's time to start preparing the meat. Among the 25 courses the kitchen prepares, the mutton dishes, gosh taba, tabak maz, and rista are some of the most important.
तो इसमें बनाने के लिए मेहनत भी लगती है बहुत। सबसे ज़्यादा मेहनत है रिश्ता गोश्तावर। इसको फ्रेश मीट होना चाहिए, बिल्कुल गर्म, जैसे ज़बा किया 10 मिनट में 5 मिनट में हमारे पास पहुंचना चाहिए।
To make these dishes, fresh cuts of mutton are trimmed and divided into separate parts. The boneless pieces are then pounded flat with these wooden hammers, known as gosh bares.
से बना हुआ सामान है, जैसे वो देखा हमर देखा आपने मटन जिसे कूटते हैं, वो भी कश्मीरी कारीगरी बनाता है। यहाँ का जो हम नाइफ इस्तेमाल करते हैं, वो भी कश्मीरी कारीगर हाथ से ही बनाता है। ये बर्तन जितने बने हैं ये हाथ से ही बने हुए हैं सारे। ये कॉपर के बर्तन हैं सारे। 5 एक बंदा दूसरे को देता है, दूसरे तीसरे, उसका सारा रेशा एक एक करके रेशा बाहर निकलता है सारा। फिर जो लास्ट में होता है बंदा, वो उसको थोड़ा फैट मिलाता है और मसाले मिलाता है, इलायची दाना पड़ता है, बड़ी इलायची का, वो मिकदार के हिसाब से होता है, अपने हिसाब से डालते हैं। उसमें नमक भी पड़ता है, उसमें फैट भी 5-10% फैट भी जाता है फूलने के लिए।
After the fat is added, the waza at the end dips his hand in water and rolls the meat into bowls. By the end of the day, the team will prepare 700 kilograms of mutton. The last dish to be served at the Vazvan is gosh taba.
एंड होते हैं गुश्ताबा। गुश्ताबा का इंतजार करते हैं लोग लास्ट में। गुश्ताबा यानी गुश्ताबा के बगैर वाजमान कंप्लीट नहीं है।
To make it, waza cook the mutton meatballs in a curd gravy known as yakni. They pour the curd into a pot with a bit of water and let it boil before adding fennel, cardamom, clove, ginger paste, garlic paste, and mint powder. After an hour of cooking, the meatballs, mutton stock, desi ghee, and fried shallot paste are added into the gravy. Because it's a curd-based gravy, it needs to be constantly stirred, so it doesn't burn or curdle.
एकदम हाथ से हम देखते हैं वो बिल्कुल नरम होना चाहिए, फिर वो खाने के लायक हो जाता है।
The gosh taba takes about 3 hours to cook and is finished with a topping of more curd. Rista is also made with meatballs, but instead of curd, it's cooked in a water-based gravy and seasoned with local chilies and spices. Waza cooked the meatballs in a bit of water and oil before seasoning them with Kashmiri chili water, turmeric, cardamom, clove, saffron, and Kashmiri cockscomb flour for color. After this, garlic, fried onion paste, and lamb stock are added into the pot. Similar to goshtaba, rista takes about 3 hours to cook. Another popular dish is tabak maz, a twice-cooked mutton rib dish. First, the ribs are boiled in water and seasoned with turmeric. Once boiled, they're seasoned with cloves, cinnamon, cumin, cardamom, fennel, dried ginger, and desi ghee. Once the ribs are cooked, they're taken out, chopped into smaller pieces, and then braised in ghee to give them a brown and crispy crust. When all of the food is ready, guests are seated in groups of 4 and wash their hands in a basin called the tash tenari. The meal is always served on large copper plates known as taramis. Every tarami is loaded with rice and carefully topped with mounds of meat in a specific order.
तरामी बनाने में उस्ताद होना चाहिए खुद, उसको पता है मुझे कहाँ पे क्या लगाना है। सी कबाब जैसे उसमें 5-6 आइटम लग गए ऊपर, तो होशियारी से देना पड़ता है कि कोई आइटम अगर दूसरी कारीगर कोई भूल जाएगा तो उस्ताद वहाँ पे खड़ा रहता है, वो याद दिलाता है ये आइटम लगाया, इसमें पूरे आइटम हो गए कि नहीं।
Over the weekend, the vazban is served 4 times.
तरामी में कम से कम मटन 4 किलो भी पड़ता है, 3 किलो पड़ता है, जैसे बारात में होगा तो 5 किलो मटन भी पड़ता है।
While this might seem like a lot of food, none of it goes to waste. Instead, guests are expected to save some and take it home.
और ये हमारे मज़हब में सुन्नत है, एक साथ खाना। मुस्लिम में नहीं, यहाँ चम्मच से नहीं खाते, हाथ से शुरू करते हैं।
The wedding also doesn't have assigned seating.
That is the uniqueness of this Vazawan, because we don't know each other for that matter. We don't know them, but when we just eat together over there, so that way we come to know about each other. Yes, the 4 persons, unknown persons, sometimes they just come together and eat together over there. That's my favorite thing. And you will not find that anywhere in the world. That's only in Kashmir you find it.
It's believed that the Mongol ruler Timur brought chefs and recipes from Samarkand, Uzbekistan, to Kashmir in the 14th century. Once in Kashmir, the recipe began to evolve and incorporate local ingredients that would form the modern vazvan. The final dish served at each vazvan is goshtaba.
My favorite dish is goshtaba only. It's totally different from other dishes like that. It's wholly and solely made in milk, and that way no chilies over there. It has got totally different taste for that matter.
वैसे यहाँ मेहमान नवाजी है कश्मीर में, ये हमारा रिवाज है। वाजवान यहाँ किसी को भी मेहमान आएगा घर में, उसको वाजवान खिलाते हैं। बाहर से कोई आएगा